meeting of the New York State Bar Association House of Delegates is hereby called to order. Good morning to all and welcome. Please take your seats and give your attention. Thank you. Traditionally, well, let me first introduce myself. My name is Scott Carson, and I am the chair of the House of Delegates as president-elect of the association. Thank you very much. We will begin this morning's meeting, as we always do, with the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. So please rise and join me in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You may resume your seats. Because this is the first meeting after the commencement of the June 1st association year, we are joined today by a number of new members of the House, new delegates. And let me just briefly point out that the House of Delegates is essentially the governing body of the association, and its work is important, but I think you will find, and I'm directing my comments to the new members in particular, I think you will find that it's a wonderful, deliberative body. We pride ourselves in civility, but in, interesting and important debates and consideration of important issues. And I think that after today, or if not today, after a number of meetings under your belt, you'll come to agree with me that it's a wonderful experience and one that you will not soon forget. So let me at this time welcome the new members of the House of Delegates who took office on June 1st. I would like to ask all the new members who are in attendance to please rise to be acknowledged. And join me in... Thank you all very much. A couple of housekeeping items. First of all, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available for viewing on the New York State Bar Association website following the meeting. If you have not already done so, at your place you will find these yellow attendance cards. Please be sure to fill them in, and when you leave today, to turn them in at the registration desk in the lobby outside of the meeting room. This is the means of enabling us to take attendance and determining who is here and who was not. So please, it's very important, please be sure you fill them out and turn them in. Please turn off your cell phones and other electronic devices to avoid disruption of the meeting. We customarily follow several House rules to ensure full discussion and orderly debate of issues. Number one, speakers should utilize the microphones provided in the room, and there should be a microphone set up on the aisle there, is there not? Okay, so that's where you'll line up for your to speak. And when you speak, begin by identifying yourself by name and by affiliation. That is, if you're a delegate from a particular entity, please identify your name and the entity from which you have been designated to serve in the House. Members wishing to speak are encouraged to do so only once on any particular agenda item, and to limit their remarks to a maximum of 3 minutes to permit as many members as possible to participate in discussion. And you can see here that I have the trusty appellate court timer. It's set for 3 minutes. After 2 minutes, the yellow light will come on, and at 3 minutes, I will be obliged to ask you to wrap up your remarks. And I see that Presiding Justice Schenkman is here. These lights are something he's all too familiar with.
No, we don't have those.
You don't have them anymore?
We don't have them.
Okay, good. I apologize.
We have a trap door.
Okay. And finally, members are encouraged to refrain from procedural motions so as to facilitate debate on substantive issues. That wraps up the initial housekeeping. Now let's proceed with the items listed on the agenda, beginning with the approval of minutes of the April 13th, 2019 meeting. Are there any corrections or amendments to those minutes? Hearing none and seeing none, the minutes of the April 13th, 2019 meeting are accepted as distributed and will become the official record of the proceedings of the April 13th, 2019 meeting. Thank you very much. Next, we have the report of the treasurer. The treasurer, our new treasurer as of June 1st, is Dominic Napolitano, a dear friend and a great treasurer. And I turn the floor over to him for this report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. In an effort to continue the comedic humor of past President Dave Miranda, I'm going to try, Dave, but you know I'm going to fail. I would like to share with you the interview, my interview at the nominating committee.
Do you have any experience?
No, sir, I have no experience, but I'm a big fan of money. I like it. I use it. I have a little. I keep it in a jar on top of my refrigerator. I'd like to put more in that jar. That's where you come in.
I want to give credit to where credit belongs. That idea to play that clip was given to me last year by Michael Fox, my dear friend. So Michael, thank you. We tried playing this yesterday at the executive committee meeting. Unfortunately, we had no sound. And Michael had volunteered that if the sound system didn't work this morning, that he would actually come up and do this segment himself. Next. I present to you the Treasurer's report for the period ending April 30th, 2019. As you will see from the next screen, the revenue over the period of 2017 to 2018 went up by about $500,000. Unfortunately, during this current year, revenue has gone down by approximately $526,000. I will get to the reasoning behind why we have those numbers, but I want you to also pay attention to the expense side of this screen. In 2017, our expenses exceeded $8,422,000. In 2018, thanks to some hard decision-making, the expenses went down by almost $1 million. Now, that was not an easy task, but we give credit to where credit is due, and our executive director clearly has a lot to do with those hard decisions that were made. Over the course of this last year, however, we're up slightly by $37,000. It's not a great number, but nonetheless, it's a number that we can manage. Next screen. The CLE program has unfortunately continued to not show improvement in at least one area, although we have some improvement in another. As you can see, the CLE revenue is $1,300,000 thereabout. We're about $200,000 less than what was recorded through April of 2018. The online programs continue to increase. However, the live programming does not. and is down by approximately $168,000. We have to be cognizant of the fact that our CLE program is in direct competition with so many other CLE programs. This is not a new phenomenon. This is something that has been ongoing now for many, many years. But as you will hear President Greenberg later on discuss in his President's report, various methods of how we believe that we can bring that up and how we can even bring up membership dues, which is the next screen. So our membership dues collection through April of this year is approximately $9.4 million, which compared to last year at $9.6 million is, again, a slight decrease of approximately $235,000. We continue to see the decline in membership dues, but again, President Greenberg will point out that there is a pool that we intend to vigorously go after during his presidency and continue past his presidency. And that pool is made up of, amongst others, New York State licensed attorneys who either live or practice out of state, and in some instances who actually are out of the country. That pool is approximately 11,000 people. So if we are able to tap that pool and bring them in, we have the potential to have 11,000 more members, which increases our revenue in terms of dues. And as part and parcel with that, also the CLE, which they need to have, will also increase as well. Next screen. As I mentioned earlier, the current expenses are approximately $37,000 more this year than in the prior year. But again, as I mentioned as well, we had substantially decreased our expenses by a little over $1 million over the period of December of 2017 and 2018. We have been able to hold the cost at this level, even though we're improving the information technology, which includes new membership database, software, and a new website. Now, during this transition period, we will be required, unfortunately, to pay duplicate costs to run those two systems, but at one point, we will have just but the one system in place, so the cost will, again, hopefully go down. Now, it's not all gloom and doom. We have some good news. Our investments, which are managed by Alex Brown, which is a subsidiary of Raymond James, they manage $8.9 million of our money. And U.S. Trust Company, which is a subsidiary of Bank of America, manages approximately $15.7 million. Now, as you can see from the chart, there was a sharp decline in the fourth quarter of 2018. We lost a little over $2.5 million in value. However, thanks to a steady hand and some wise thinking to not just abandon ship, Alex Brown's assets grew from $8.8 million at the end of the third quarter to $8.9 million. And during that same period, U.S. Trust holdings increased from $15.3 million to $15.7 million. Now, we expect that we will meet with the advisors sometime this month, and that they will have continuing good news as far as our total investments are concerned. Mr. Chairperson, that concludes my report, and I submit it for your and the House's approval.
Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. Are there any questions of the Treasurer? Seeing and hearing none, your report is accepted with the thanks of the House. Thank you very much. The next item on this morning's agenda is the presentation of the Ruth Stimson Award. However, that award is not ready to be presented at this meeting, and therefore that will be deferred. The presentation of the award will be deferred until the November 2019 meeting of the House. So we will pass over that for now. Which brings us to item 5 and item 6, which in my humble opinion is the highlight of this morning's meeting. We are going to have the installation of Hank Greenberg as president of the association, and to be followed by his inaugural remarks and his report to the House. Hank took office as the 122nd president of the association on June 1st, which, as I indicated, is the commencement of the association year. Since this is the first House meeting of the association year, Hank will now formally take the oath of office as president. So I would like to recognize at this time retired New York Court of Appeals Judge Howard A. Levine, who will make some remarks and then administer the oath of office to Hank. Judge Levine, I welcome you to the podium.
Good morning. It is my honor and distinct pleasure to administer the oath of office to my dear and treasured friend, Hank Greenberg. And at this point, I would like to say that I feel somewhat as a proxy for his mother and father, lawyer father, and for Judith Kay, Hank's mentor for 25 years and counting, who, if there is an afterlife, I can imagine beaming with joy and pride at this occasion. Hank's friendship with me was really preceded by my friendship with Hope, Hank's principal advisor, moral supporter, and chief cheerleader. When I went on the Court of Appeals, the chief judge assigned me to an extracurricular duty as the lead judge on matters involving bar admissions, motions, applications, and so forth. And Hope was assigned as the staff member to aid me in making my recommendations to the court as a whole. So basically what happened was Hope would tell me what to do and then I would do it. But out of that we forged a great friendship. We had a lot of fun doing it, and we ended up making some major modifications in the rules on admissions, which were adopted by the court. Reviewing Hank's resume shows clearly that he was uniquely highly qualified to become president of this organization. Repeatedly through the years, he was assigned to positions of great responsibility and great challenge. And he performed superbly in each one of those positions, humbly, strongly, and ethically. Just to name a few of those in his history will take me a few minutes. First of all, of course, there was the clerkship with Judith Kay. And if you didn't think that was a challenge, you should have heard Hank yesterday, as many of you did, explaining how vigorously, how challenged, and how exhaustively it was to serve as one of Judith Kay's clerks. And he did it so successfully that they formed a relationship and a friendship that continued after his clerkship, in which the work was so intense on after his day jobs that we jokingly used to call him the lifetime clerk. And what he did was help her prepare for her speeches, lectures, and law review articles, which of course established her nationwide as a great jurist and a very significant legal thinker. So after that clerkship, Hank went on to the U.S. Attorney's office in the Northern District of New York, in which one of his early assignments a relatively green prosecutor, was to be co-prosecutor in the corruption trial of the Rensselaer County Democratic chairman, in which case there was a complete conviction on all charges, in which he beat two of the most outstanding and able and experienced defense lawyers, one of whom was E. Stewart Jones of more recent fame, and gaining an acquittal of Joe Bruno, the former majority leader, a couple of years ago. That was number two. And then on from that was his appointment as general counsel of the State Department of Health, a Democrat appointed to that high position in a Republican administration, which speaks eloquently of his abilities, and he handled it beautifully. And then after that, he became one of Andrew Cuomo's principal lieutenants when Andrew was was Attorney General, and Hank was his counsel. Those are just a few of the achievements that he had during his remarkable career. But not only that, Hank, with all these accomplishments in the day world, also remained a passionate lover of the law. A lover of the law which manifested itself in law review articles and in biographical materials on some of his judicial heroes, such as Chief Judge Irving Layman, and more recently, a lecture, the Hughes Lecture, in which he told about Charles Evans Hughes's experiences in defending civil liberties between the two stints he had with the United States Supreme Court. So Hank had this other quality of idealism about the law, a passionate love of the law and its role in a just society, which I must say is a matter that we ought to think a great deal about in this day and age. So there he was, an idealist, but also an idealist with no illusions, no illusions. I don't know where I got that phrase, but Hank probably could supply it for me. He realized that those ideals cannot be manifested without getting into the nitty-gritty of getting things done. So I say to you, as the governing body of the New York State Bar Association, this is what you can expect during Hank's leadership of this organization. Fasten your seatbelts. You are in for an exciting ride. Hank will manifest and lead you and work with you to continue the great traditions of this association, which saw and has seen its mission not only to further and protect the financial interests of its members, but to do good things for the public and for good government. So you will be participating with Hank in a cascade, I would say, of proposals and products and programs that will be wonderful in terms of its impact on the law and society and the administration of justice. And with that expectation in mind, I'd like Hank and Hope to come up here for me to administer the oath. Put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Henry M. Greenberg, do solemnly swear
I, Henry M. Greenberg, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York,
that I will support the Constitution of the State of New York of the United States,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duty of President of the New York State Bar Association
the duty of President of the New York State Bar Association
in accordance with the association's bylaws
in accordance with the association's bylaws
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Amen.
Wow. I am rarely lost for words, but this morning I am. I cannot find the words to express adequately the depth of my appreciation and gratitude to all of you for entrusting me with the responsibility of being president of the greatest bar association in the greatest state and the greatest nation in the only world we know. I cannot thank my beloved friend, Judge Howard Levine, for those beautiful words, for swearing me in. I know our beloved friend, Judith Kay, is very, very happy that you did this today. On behalf of all of us, I can't thank you enough for your extraordinary, brilliant, remarkable public service to the state. It is the highest, noblest calling. I know it because men like you gave so much of your life to making the state a better place. And thank you for that introduction, although now everybody here thinks I can't hold the job. And thank you to all of you. For 142 years, this great association has led. That is who we are. That is what we do. That is what we are about. We have led on issues of profound importance to our profession and to the public. It is that legacy, it is that tradition which brings us all here this morning. And on mornings like this, all of you, the members of the House of Delegates, the leaders of this great bar association, it is a privilege to join with you in that legacy and in that tradition. And to meetings to come, we will be talking about the great public policy issues of our time. I think Judge Levine recognized we are facing extraordinary challenges. And for those of you who have known me and who I have had the privilege of serving with for many years, you know how passionate I am about those kinds of issues and public policy and leading. This morning, I want to do something, though, a little bit different. I want to talk about us. Yes, us, the New York State Bar Association. And I want to talk about where we as an organization, in order to do the great things that we have been tasked to do, must accomplish in order to provide the kinds of services our members have come to expect of us and to lead as we always have. So I'm going to talk a little bit about us. I'm going to talk about the organization. I'm going to talk about how I see this year and in the years to come. For lack of a better word, I want to talk about the vision that the officers and the leadership of this association have for our future as an organization, so we can build the infrastructure we need to be the great association we have always been and will always be. And part of that is sort of talking about the reality of our challenges, truthfully, candidly, sometimes painfully. But to begin where we must, this you must always must understand about our organization. We are strong and growing stronger. We have the unique blessings of brilliant leadership in the past that has put us in a place where today we have over 72,000 members. You could fill a large stadium. You could exceed large stadiums with 72,000 people to whom all of us owe a fiduciary obligation of service. We have a $23 million balanced budget. that allows us to provide the services we do. 56 standing committees, 26 sections. Those sections have over 23,000 members. That is strong. And how did we get to be strong? Not by accident, but by the gift and genius of those who came before us. Strong, visionary leaders. Let me give you an example, a story, if you will, a parable about what we have done and what we will need to do in the future, and it's the story of our bar center. And I think it's instructive. We were founded by the New York State Legislature in 1876, and because of the unique relationship we had with the legislature, they created us by legislative enactment. Our first home, and our home for many decades, was in the state capitol. So the first state capitol you're seeing from 1876, that's where our offices were. And we moved on from there to the new state capitol in 1899. By the way, if you ever go to the state capitol, you will see on the first floor a plaque commemorating that we were there. So strong were the ties and the bonds of the state legislature with our organization. And over time, we outgrew the capitol, and we moved to a place across the street from the capitol, 99 Washington Avenue. We were there in 1953, and that brings us to the mid-1960s, when the organization's leaders, the executive committee, people like all of you, sat in a room with the president and the officers, and we recognized at a time when we had only 19,000 members that we could not grow, we could not prosper, unless we had a physical facility, bricks and mortar, that would allow us to house the staff, that could provide the services, the continuing education, and other things. And so these leaders, with only 19,000 members, looked into the future, and they raised the Bar Foundation at the time, $1.6 million with only 22,000 members. By the way, that's $12 million today. They raised $12 million to move into the Bar Center. And they fought a great fight. The historic preservationists in the community where we now are, 1 through 6 Elk Street, Governor's Row, they didn't want it touched, the mayor didn't want it touched, but our leaders ultimately crafted and fought and negotiated a resolution that gave us our first bar center. And then time went by, and we grew and we grew. The vision that these people had about what would happen if we did those things came to be. And we needed more space in order to provide our services. So in the mid-1980s, again, all of you, the members of the House of Delegates at the time, the officers, understood we had to expand. And by the way, the picture you're looking at, the man behind the microphone, is Robert McCrate. To his immediate right is Henry King. One was the managing partner of Sullivan Cromwell. The other was the managing partner of Davis Polk. They led this organization. They raised $6.8 million. By the way, that's $15 million the foundation raised. That would be $25 million to give us a bar center. And they expanded the bar center. And there's a picture I'm going to show you. It's an interesting one. It says a lot, I think. That's Henry King breaking through the wall for the bar expansion. And you see there's words to the future, and we sort of highlighted that bullseye, to the future. They knew that to get to the future, we had to do the hard things. And they built the bar center. Well, that's where we are today. We have to do the hard things to get to our future. But our challenges today are not about bricks and mortar. It's not about more buildings. Our challenge is digital. So let me tell you just one other story about why that challenge is so urgent and what happens to those who don't meet that challenge. I'm looking around the room and I see many of my beloved friends and members from Western New York, past President Shraver, Robert Whitmer, Andrew Brown. They can tell you the story of a company called Kodak in Rochester. Kodak, for those of you who are my age, was everything in their industry. Everything. They just dominated the world of photography and images and pictures like you can't imagine. And they made, among other companies, Rochester the great city it became. They prospered, they built gardens, they did everything. They dominated their world. And they had the greatest research and technology department in the world, inventing great things. And they came upon this thing, this brilliant idea. It's called digital photography. Kodak had it. They had it. And you know what they did with it? Nothing. They did nothing with it. But other people did, little companies called Apple. And Kodak went bankrupt, and Apple is Apple, and now all of us have smartphones. And it's not just that industry, all throughout, all walks of life, right? Those of us remember things like Blockbuster. Here, everybody, did you like Blockbuster? Right, I love Blockbuster. You know how many Blockbusters we have today? We have one. It's in Alaska. We now do Netflix and Amazon. So, that's what happens to companies and organizations that don't meet the digital challenge. We are going to meet the digital challenge. And let me explain to you the urgency of us meeting that challenge and meeting it quickly by talking some hard truths. Let's talk about membership. So the chart you're looking at is membership numbers of the New York State Bar Association from our founding in 1877 to 2012. Look, we're a rocket ship. Up, 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 ever up. There's one little red mark there. Okay, for those of you who are historically minded, that's 1930 and 1935. That would be the Great Depression. 25% unemployment. But up we go into about 2012, and then what happens? What happens? Down, down, down. That's overall membership. Dues-paying membership has been declining for over a decade. Now, there's something important about that chart, right? It puts the lies to some myths you hear people talk about. Here's myth number one. It's the millennials. They don't join anything, right? Have you heard that? They don't join the Masons, they don't join the Knights of Pythias, they don't join things, so they're not joining bar associations, and that's why. That's not true. Did millennials stop joining things in 2012? Did they have an epiphany and decide in 2012? They join things like crazy. They will pay to join streaming services like Netflix and Amazon. They just stopped joining the New York State Bar Association, right? Here's another myth. You'll hear people say, well, it was the economy. Oh, it was the Great Recession. That's what knocked us off our game, and that's what caused a decline. That was 2008. We went up in 9. We went up in 10. We went up in 11. We went up in 12. We're in a full employment economy today, and we are still experiencing dues-paying decline. And here's another chart that shows you where we were and where we are now. And I think it's one that speaks volumes about where we need to be. This is a chart, for lack of a better way of putting it, simply shows what percentage of people, let's call it market share, of members of the New York who are admitted to New York practice who belong to our association. And that number is growing. It's over 200,000 now. So not that long ago, more than 1 out of 2 lawyers who were admitted, a voluntary bar association. We're not mandatory, as we all know. We're voluntary. More than 1 out of 2 would join the New York State Bar Association up into a time. And now you see we are declining in that respect. And let me show you one last chart that shows the seismic impact of technology in terms of our revenue and our ability to do certain things, right, which is CLE. And it's the difference between, we're calling it live CLE. Those are people who physically go to a CLE program in person, as compared to online CLE. That blue chart right there shows that since 2010, people who physically leave their office and go to see a CLE program, that's declining. And that spike, by the way, that downward trend is spiking even more aggressively this year. Up through the last quarter of April of this past year, we've lost $200,000 in revenue from what we did last year in terms of physical present CLE. That's not because our staff isn't doing an extraordinary job. with CLE. It's not because the quality of the program isn't strong. It's the reality with the new technology that people don't want to leave their office and go to see a CLE. They want to do it at their PC in the workplace, or they want to listen to it in a car, driving home, or somewhere else. The other line, this red line, however, shows the trend for online CLE, right? And you can see that's trending up. So that's just one example of sort of the challenges that we face from technology. Here's something else. We don't often talk about it, right? We don't think in terms of this. Let's just call it competition, right? And I'm not talking about other bar associations, not the synergies we have with our brothers and sisters and other great bar associations, city bar, county lawyers, county bar associations all across the state, affinity bar associations. That's strong. That makes us stronger. This is a different kind of competition. This is competition for CLE. This is competition for books. This is competition all of you in practice are facing with people who are producing forms. These are companies, these are for-profit companies, some of them with hedge fund money supporting them, that can provide services, right, that are world-class and state-of-the-art. So yes, we are facing the challenge of technology. We are facing the challenges of competition by private sector entities, right, that are competing with us in terms of the services we provide members. How do we meet that challenge? We meet that challenge by building a virtual bar association. There are, as I see it, 5 elements to this virtual bar association: website, content, products, community, and global. Let's talk a little bit about each of these and some of the things that we need to improve on. Let's start with our website. Okay, we have the world's worst website. It's a horror show. Look at it. Look at all those words. Who, if they clicked on it, would want to stay on it? That homepage of ours is a political small p nightmare of everybody wanting their pet project and thing on the website, with no discrimination or judgment made about what our members and potential members would want to see. That is the website we have now. It gets worse. What's wrong with the website? Well, try to log in. You can't. How about this? Try to purchase something. You can't. Try to find something on the website. Nope, can't do that either. And try to talk to someone. You know, people will be there from 8:45 to 4 o'clock. No, you can't do that either. So, you want to see what else is the problem? Okay, this is a test for all of you. Have you seen that? Come on, you're all under oath. Have you ever had a problem lining in, right? Okay, see that little box there, right? Remember me? It's not true. It doesn't remember you. Sorry. All right. So, let's talk about content. And this is, in part, a good news story. And it's about all of you. And it's about the leaders of our committees and sections. We have the world's greatest content. That's not hyperbole, that's truth. Our journals, our CLE, it is state-of-the-art. It is everything lawyers need to think about and read and help them learn and grow and be better lawyers and professionals and persons. So what's the problem when you have the world's greatest content? You can't read it. There are paywalls hiding and concealing it. Now, with all respect to those people who hide these journals or sections, some of them, so that those people who aren't members of their sections, right, you know, only they can access it, they're following their intuition, right? They think, oh, if we show it to the world, if we make it available for others to see it, they won't want to pay dues and join the section, right? That's intuitive. Their intuition is wrong. Go on the New York Times website. Go on the Washington Post. You get to look at 3 free articles every month. Why do they give those teasers? Because they know if people can see the content, they will want to pay for it. So there's the problem with the paywalls. And what we've done with our world's greatest content, right? It's like the old line, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there and can't hear it, did it really fall? It's worse. If you can actually access, right? If you can actually see the journals and find your way to it, right? They're only there for a short time. It's like invisible ink, right? And then if you want to share it, and authors of articles want to share, partners want to share with associates articles, right? All you get are these PDFs, right? In the real world, people share things. They just copy a link, paste it in an email, and send it to somebody. You can't do that with our articles. So let's talk about products. Same thing. This is a good news story. The world's greatest products. Our books are phenomenal. Our CLE is state-of-the-art, right? So what's the problem, right? You've all been on Amazon, right? You want to buy a book on Amazon, you get the book, you look at the beautiful picture, you see the reviews, it's gorgeous, you do the one-click thing, boom, you got the book before you even knew it, and maybe you didn't even want it. Okay, you want to order a book or a product? Look what you look at on our website. You want to buy any of that? Right? So, you know, it is the antithesis of what we are trying to create, which is one-click shopping. Here we have no-click shopping. All right, let's talk about community. The other critical element of building a virtual bar center. One of the most critical, if not most critical, right? Where does the world live today? Where do lawyers live today? Millennials and others. They live online. They live in the world of social networking. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's where the world is communicating. And they're not just communicating, they're communicating in a synergistic way, in an interactive way, connecting and sharing entities and committees and sections, all of which should be shared. There should be blogs, there should be community dialogues, right? Vibrant, robust, where people can talk. We should have all of those things. Our members want to share. They want to share. But what's the problem? They can't. Our online presence is not nearly where it needs to be. Our members want to talk to each other. They want to know each other. So, let's sort of sum up where we are. Yes. That's where we are. It's not where we're going to be, but it's where we are. And believe it or not, our technological infrastructure was designed in 1998. Now, I know that doesn't seem long ago for people like me. That is the dark age in terms of technology. We have created, in terms of our infrastructure, this coral reef with one layer of sediment on top of another, building and building and building. So, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it in order for us to be the greatest bar association, the greatest state, and the only nation? Well, let's talk about website. Oh, one last thing. Global. We don't think of ourselves as a global force sometimes, right? I tend to be somewhat parochial. We are a global force. It's not because Hank Greenberg told you that. We engaged a consultant that did an international survey, tested the New York State Bar Association name, reputation, the phrase of art is brand, against 11 other bar associations in the world. How did we stack up? Here's how we stuck up. We were the winner. No one came close. No one comes close internationally with the strength of our brand. Their key finding was that the New York State Bar Association, we are the name for lawyers in Canada, in the UK, in Europe, in Asia. Why? Why? Because the greatest concentration of lawyers, the most gifted, the most talented, committed, inspired lawyers is in the Empire State, the economic capital of the world. New York law is the default choice of law for the world. And we are the global leaders, and we need to think of ourselves as the global leaders. What are the potential and opportunities for us internationally? Limitless, limitless. 26,000 New York admitted lawyers all throughout the world, right? They need our CLE, they need our products, they need our service, and the opportunities for growth of the 26,000, only 3,500 are members of the New York State Bar Association. We just took a quick sample. Look at Canada, look at the UK, look at China, right? In terms of the potential for growth. They all need us. We need them. We need them. More than 80% of these New York admitted lawyers in the UK and Asia and Canada, right? All of them need us and we need them. How about nationally? The potential is even greater. There are 94,000 New York admitted lawyers in the 49 states and territories. Only 11,000, right, are members of the New York State Bar. If you just looked at California and Florida, look at the potential there. They need New York CLE. 88% of the New York admitted lawyers in California do not belong to the New York State Bar. 84%, same thing in Florida. Okay. So let's talk about the future. We've now looked with an open-eye approach to our challenges. We need to reimagine ourselves, how we do and provide the services. There are 5 elements that are going to be necessary for us to do that. 5 elements that we are working on as we speak. We need a digital transformation. We need to look at our structure and operations. We need to look at the way we communicate with the world. We need to engage in long-term fiscal planning. And we need to be proactive in our commitment to diversity. Let's talk a little bit about each of these things. Our technology. Remember that horse and buggy? No more Band-Aids. We need to burn it to the ground. We need to rebuild our technological infrastructure, and we are. We have, through our executive director's tireless work in this effort, Pam McDevitt, we have purchased state-of-the-art software, Fontiva and Salesforce. Fontiva is going to allow us to understand, process, collate, use this vast mountain, 42 years of collected data. Now we will be able to analyze it. Salesforce will give us the ability to improve our e-commerce capacity. The website. We have engaged a consultant, Click, that is going to give us a user-friendly, intuitive, accessible, aesthetically attractive website. The homepage, the new homepage, not the one that I mocked today, but the one that you will admire, is going to be posted in September. At the same time, with respect to our data, with respect to our infrastructure, we have contracted with a world-class consultant, Fusion Span. They are providing chief information office services and will for at least the near term. But ultimately, we have to build our own staff capacity. We have to strengthen training. We have to improve the way our own people use technology. But let me tell you one other thing about technology, right? Even somebody who went to law school in the Stone Age, the 1980s, like me, can tell you. You can buy the best technology in the world. You can have the best software in the world. Digital transformation is about you. It's about me. It's about the officers. It's about the staff. It's about people. We have to buy in. We have to, in every way, invest ourselves, immerse ourselves in technology, and make it seamless, effortless, part of what we do and how we do it. All right, structure and operations reform. A little history lesson because I can't afford it. Those are our first bylaws in 1876. I find them beautiful. 8 pages long, svelte, slim, you can read them, you can understand them. Let's look at our bylaws today. 41 pages long, with respect to our bylaws committee, and I love you all. Not an easy read. No one, if we were designing the New York State Bar Association today, would design it the way it now is. And so we have created a special committee on association structure and operations, which will be chaired by our peerless past president, Glenn Lau Key. It is going to do a deep dive in all that we do. It's going to look at everything. Some of these issues may be controversial, others not. But we have to be built and suited to the challenges of our today, with the needs of today. And it begins by looking at the way we organize ourselves, the way we work, and making sure that we are built as an organization structurally in terms of our operations as a 21st century bar association. Likewise, strategic communications and plan. We need to up our game in the most dramatic way possible in terms of our social media capacity and presence. We need to be online. We need to be doing public service announcements. We need to be everywhere. All of that content, all of our great work can no longer be a falling tree in the forest. The world in real time needs to know what we are doing and how brilliantly we are doing it. And past President David Miranda has once again provided service by chairing our special committee on strategic communications. And he is going to see that those paywalls that have stopped the world from knowing what we do, he's going to break through it so the world sees the New York State Bar Association. Fiscal soundness. Now, that picture, I see that picture of a person staring into the horizon, looking at the future with optimism. Somebody the other day came up to me and said, no, it looks like somebody's going to jump into the cliff. I'm a half-full kind of guy. So, led by our brilliant Finance Committee Chair, Andrew Brown, our Finance Committee is going to engage in a multi-year strategic fiscal plan. You know, I got to tell you, I'm not a great believer in sports metaphors, and those few times I ever did it, I would quote Yogi Berra. But I think Wayne Gretzky nailed it, right? I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. That's how he got to be the greatest hockey player in the world. And that's what our organization needs to do. We need to think about where our members are going, what they want. Today, tomorrow, and in the future, we need to provide those services. So a word about diversity, proactive commitment to diversity. You've all seen, I suspect, the journal message where I speak about it as a moral imperative. It is a moral imperative. It is what we must do. It is about our values. It is about what this profession needs to be, right? We live in a world where the Statue of Liberty sits in New York Harbor. New York State, our clients have more people who speak more languages, practice more faiths, or of more ethnicities and creeds. That is New York. We need to be as diverse and representative as a profession as the clients we represent. But in addition to that, in addition to being the right thing, it's the smart thing. Listen to this. 2019. How many women as a percentage are members of the New York State Bar Association? 36%. Does anyone think we have a future 10, 20 years from now? If 36% of a profession now where more women go to law school than men, more women are entering the profession than men, and only 36% of our members are women? So we need to turn that around. Now, we have been talking about diversity as a profession for a long, long time. Like the Nike slogan says, just do it. And we have done it this year. Our standing committees, 59 of them, each of those standing committees has either a chair, a co-chair, or a vice chair who is a woman, a person of color, or otherwise reflects diversity. So diversity is the right thing, but it's also the thing we must do in order to be the association we want to be. I believe our future is brighter today than it has ever been. And I got some statistics to prove it to you. Here's what we are capable of when we harness the energy and challenge and enthusiasm and inspiration that makes us us. In the 1960s, one decade, our membership grew by 100%. One decade. In the 1970s, Only 30%. Now, can you imagine? Some people, the naysayers, were wringing their hands saying, oh my God, we went from 100% to 30%. The sky is falling. We can't turn that around. Well, what happened in the 1980s? The rocket ship took off again. 63% we grew in one decade. In the 1990s, we grew by 33%, and in the early 2000s, by 15%. If we do the digital transformation we need to do, if we are proactively committed to diversity, if we take the hard look at our structural operations and make the changes we need to make, if we communicate with the world the way it is communicating now, if we do all of those things, I tell you, by the time we celebrate our 150th anniversary, we will have 85,000 members. I know we will, because that's who we are. Two last things. You have given me the highest honor I ever expect to have in my professional life. And you have given it to me at a time when our society, our community, our clients need us more than ever. There are great things happening in our world, but we know at the same time there are challenges that we are facing that cry out for attention. We know we live in a time in a world where the divisiveness in our politics and in our society, the tribalization, is tearing us apart as a nation. Whatever you believe, north, south, east, or west, that's a source of concern. We know that was once a society that marked itself by civil discourse. The anger, the incivility has turned public discourse into a blood sport. We know that. We also know, whatever we might think, however we might debate, that the public is losing faith in the capacity of the institutions that we built, lawyers built. The public is losing confidence in the ability of those institutions to solve problems, right? We know that. And we know this world, this country, our towns where we practice need our voice more than ever. They need your expertise. They need your skill. They need your vision. They need our unique capacity to solve problems, to look at differences, to look at both sides of an issue, bring people together, help warring parties that can agree on nothing and help them find common ground. Most of all, our country needs us to show them why the rule of law has kept us free for over 200 years. One last thing. Never forget this. We belong to the most influential, consequential, impactful profession in the history of the world. Lawyers right wrongs. We solve problems. We make society better. We are society's problem solvers. We are the foot soldiers of the Constitution. The rights the citizenry takes for granted mean nothing without us championing those rights. Our future is bright. I thank you for the gift and privilege of being your president. God bless us all and this great Bar Association.
Thank you very much, President Greenberg. Does the word inspirational come to mind? Those were indeed inspiring remarks, and I think they stand as a call to all of us to pursue the great potential that our great association has. I think our future is bright. Hank has many exemplary traits, certainly not the least of which is his love of history. And I think he has demonstrated to us that history is not simply an academic inquiry, but provides a roadmap to the future and to the future success of our great association. And I, for one, and I suspect that all of us, are ready to go along for the ride and to bring us to new places that we've never been before. So join me one more time in congratulating our new president. And thank you, too, to Judge Levine for your remarks, which certainly were a fitting component of this great moment in our association's history. Okay, we move on now to the next agenda item. I have had the privilege, in addition, was it something I said? I have had the privilege, in addition to my work here in the New York State Bar Association, of having served since 2006 as a member of the American Bar Association House of Delegates. I have been the delegate from the Suffolk County Bar Association. This year, however, at the conclusion of the ABA annual meeting in San Francisco in August, I will cease to be a delegate from the Suffolk County Bar Association and will be proud to assume the role of delegate from the New York State Bar Association. And this is by way of introducing the fact that at the same time that I become a delegate of the New York State Bar Association, at the conclusion of the annual meeting in San Francisco, the current president-elect of the ABA will become the new president of the ABA. We are honored to have her here with us today and to share some remarks with us. So let me take this opportunity to introduce the president-elect of the American Bar Association, soon to be the president of the American Bar Association, from the great state of Louisiana, Judy Perry Martinez.
Thank you, Scott, for welcoming me, and congratulations, President Greenberg, and thank you for inviting me to speak before your esteemed body of the House of Delegates. When I met with Hank at the ABA Bar Leadership meeting in March, and the Bar Leadership Conference is a 40-year history of training and giving networking opportunities to bar leaders across the country, I exercised some restraint in not joking with Hank about his legendary baseball namesake. Now that we're in Cooperstown, I just would like to note for the record, Hank, that while the Hall of Fame does have a Greenberg, it also has a Perry and 2 Martinezes. So it's an honor to be here with all of you and to be here for Hank's inauguration, especially as I prepare to take the gavel in hand in August, and will do so, of course, with many members of this room who also serve in the House of Delegates and have long served both your Bar Association and the ABA, including the ABA former President Jim Silkenat, current ABA Board of Governors member Mark Alcott, and of course Mike Byrowitz, whom you all know, and many other of your former presidents who have come to serve in the ABA and served us so well. During the last 10 months, I've had the opportunity to go across the country and to meet with judges and lawyers and law students and members in private practice, to speak to those whom we serve. And my travels have taken me multiple times to your great state. I was here this week to meet with the American Bar Endowment Board. I have previously been here to meet with the American Bar Foundation Fellows. I was at the launch at Columbia University Law School of the ABA partnership with the Clooney Foundation on the Trial Observers for Justice. And I did an Access to Justice forum at Fordham Law School and met with students in an ethics and professional responsibility class at Columbia and served on a panel on disaster legal services at that law school that Judge Lippman organized. And I thank you for all the courtesies that each and every one of you have extended when I've been in your state, and I hope in the months to come that'll have opportunities to come back. Those with whom I have met and had the privilege of meeting with over the past year have readied me for the work that lies ahead by sharing their perspectives. And their viewpoints and their observations have helped me think deeply about the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead for the ABA, for your association, for the legal profession, and frankly, for our nation. It's given me a sense of the role that they believe that lawyers and judges must play in our democracy. Those who need our services also lend considerable insight into the challenges that face us. I learned a great deal when I was with ABA President Bob Carlson for a week on the border in Harlingen, Texas last August. Our trip, which was facilitated by the ABA's Commission on Immigration, which does tremendous direct legal services work for those detainees at that border, and does so much work in terms of policies in the immigration arena. Their work allowed us to go down there and to meet with detainees, to do asylum interviews, and to understand better what's going on in the courthouses at the border. We toured a separated and unaccompanied children's center. We observed in federal court the combined effects of the zero tolerance policy and Operation Streamline on unauthorized border crossings. As we watched over 70 individuals in that one morning, sit in federal court shackled, en masse, wearing translation headphones, listening to their Miranda rights and hearing their charges, and pleading guilty to the federal crime of misdemeanor illegal crossing. And like I think, and many of you would agree, likely many of them not understanding exactly the full implications of that plea. And just a few weeks ago, I attended the ABA's Equal Justice Conference in Louisville, and before that event, I sat down with the Louisville Legal Aid Society attorneys and learned from them and talk with them about the work they do on the front lines each and every day to help homeless individuals, victims of domestic violence, veterans, and so much more. And through these many experiences, I've come to understand that we need to listen earlier, more often, and to be able to better hear the stories and the challenges of our clients and our potential clients and the public. We need to think about whether there are ways to better serve the poor and near poor, the 85% of the population of poor and near poor, whom we are not reaching when they're in need of legal services. And while our efforts, our studies, our commitment through pro bono legal services and more are so wonderful, we are failing those in need. We cannot continue to do so. We must ask whether, through innovations such as court navigators like you have in your state, even judicially authorized and regulated legal service providers, document preparers, online dispute resolution, and so much more is going on in terms of innovations in our country, in New York and Washington State, Utah, and Colorado, and being looked at in California and Arizona and New Mexico, whether those are ways that people in need can get some form of civil legal services, as endorsed by the Conference of Chief Justices of our country in 2015. And Michael Miller is so right, as he said last night, that we need to take all the necessary and principled steps, no matter how unpopular, to ensure that our government is affording robust funding for legal representation in the criminal arena. The ABA's relationship with state and local bars, state judiciaries, the Conference of Chief Justices, the National Center for State Courts, the Legal Services Corporation, and many other organizations enables us to accomplish more together than we ever could accomplish separately. We share information. We learn from each other. We inspire and we bring resolutions before our policy-making bodies. And here let me take a moment and commend Michael Miller and Ron Minkoff, as well as the New York County Bar Association, for their collaborative work and efforts with the ABA Center for Innovation and over 15 ABA entities in order to produce the best practice guidelines for online legal service providers that will be presented to the House of Delegates of the ABA in August. This is a wonderful, a perfect example of how we complement each other's efforts, how we are stronger together, and most importantly, how we do the best for the public when we join forces. I'm committed to continuing that collaboration on the values that unite us. Those values include our insistence on an independent judiciary and standing up against political attacks on the integrity of our judges, using our voice to insist that the work of our justice system is, in each and every instance, fair and impartial, and continuing the ABA's careful and thorough evaluation of each and every nominee to the federal bench. We share the values of a diverse and inclusive profession that reflects the society we serve. And as President Greenberg told us moments ago and has said before, it's a moral imperative. And I commend you, Hank, as well as your wonderful Executive Director, Pam, for your work and the work of your staff and others and your commitment to diversity and inclusion. Our profession must afford not only meaningful opportunity for those who look different than maybe you or me or the person to your left or your right, but we have to make sure that we create and maintain an environment that fosters and brings out the best in each individual so that every lawyer can enjoy sustained a career in service to their clients and the public, making a living for themselves and their family, and contribute to the laws in our justice system. We champion a vibrant and healthy and independent profession, and I emphasize healthy because of our critical work that's ongoing right now to promote lawyer wellness as we face a professional culture with alarming rates of alcoholism, suicide, substance abuse, and depression. The ABA has produced numerous resources online at ababar.org/wellbeing. So please spread the word to your colleagues and your firms across your professional networks and on social media about the resources that are there for us and all others who need help. Together, we foster a passion for access to justice. For the third straight year, the ABA, your ABA, has proposed, the administration has proposed closing down the Legal Services Corporation. And again, the ABA is leading the charge, lobbying in Washington and mobilizing state and local bar associations to advocate for robust funding for legal services in our communities. And through ABA Day on the Hill and other grassroots efforts in which so many of your leaders participate, we are making a difference. We also promote access to justice through our disaster legal services work, from hurricanes on the East Coast to fires on the West Coast, to earthquakes in Alaska, to typhoons in our U.S. territories in the South Pacific. We are being called upon again and again and again to assist. And lawyers make a difference, not only by taking up pro bono matters on behalf of residents of their own states, but thanks to the blueprint that was created following the tremendous hurricane that hit my own state of Louisiana and Katrina. The ABA House of Delegates adopted a model for all Supreme Courts, and they have now issued Katrina orders to allow out-of-state attorneys to deliver pro bono services remotely through all sorts of means, including ABA-freelegalanswers.org. The ABA has long promoted access to justice and pro bono legal assistance to survivors of domestic and sexual violence, and we will mobilize lawyers across the country, and I hope many of you, as we take on domestic and sexual violence as a theme for the 2019 National Pro Bono Celebration in October. And we are so grateful to so many of you who participate year after year in the pro bono celebrations each and every year. Our neighbors in our towns, in our communities, our colleagues in other professions, our youth in our communities are looking to the lawyers, to you, to help them better understand the promise of our democracy through the rule of law. Consider the recent findings of the ABA's National Survey on Civil Literacy. 1 in 10 respondents think the Declaration of Independence freed slaves in the Confederate States. And almost 1 in 5 believe the first 10 amendments in the United States Constitution are called the Declaration of Independence instead of the Bill of Rights. 30% do not believe, 30% do not believe that non-citizens have the right of freedom of speech. As Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said, the practice of democracy is not passed down through the gene pool. It must be taught and learned anew by each generation of citizens. I submit to you that it is our responsibility as lawyer leaders to make certain that we teach it. That is why we are all so proud of the ABA's leadership on Law Day and the extensive participation from the courts and from states and local bars across this country. Here, too, we complement each other's work and we learn from each other. This year's Law Day theme was free speech, free press, and free society, and it was timely and it was relevant. For next year, we are already mobilizing what is a remarkable opportunity for civics engagement in each and every one of our communities. Yes, the year 2020, as all of you know, in the state of New York, it marks the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing and protecting women's constitutional right to vote. The passage, and I want you to think about this, the passage marked the largest expansion of democracy in the history of our country. And the centennial offers an unparalleled opportunity to commemorate a milestone of democracy and, more importantly, to explore its relevance to the issues of voting rights and equal rights in our country today and even abroad. We are asking bar associations to join us in marking this historic milestone and to share with us all the resources that you are planning and the things you're planning, as well as what we're doing will be available to you at the ABA and already is available on our website. We're in a defining moment, not only in terms of standing up for the rule of law and independent and federal and state judiciaries, not only ensuring up the integrity of our democratic institutions, including those that depend on fairness, equality, due process, and respect, but also in terms of fulfilling the potential of our bar associations to support our members in the profession. Like the New York State Bar, the ABA is undergoing a considerable reinvigoration of our membership strategy, and we want all lawyers to have access to more benefits at a more affordable rate. And we believe that our approach will complement what state bars and local bars make available to their members in terms of in-person CLEs, local networking opportunities, and publication on local and state law and jurisprudence, and of course, your state bar's leadership on matters of New York law and arbitrations. Through our work in the ABA Center for Innovation, our Law Practice Division and Tech Show, we are exploring artificial intelligence and how we as lawyers can harness its power so that its application in the legal sector makes sense for our clients. We produce policy and cutting-edge materials on cybersecurity, on law practice management, on practice-specific issues informed by our national perspective. But most importantly, we believe in the critical need and the membership value of being a vibrant national voice for our profession. A national voice that supports and amplifies the voice of state and local bar association and is the national voice in support of equal justice and an independent judiciary. The ABA has 4 goals, only 4 stated goals, the first of which is to serve our members and the last of which is to advance the rule of law. I believe that there is no more important way for the ABA to serve its members than to use our voice to protect and promote the rule of law both around the globe and at home. That is why the ABA's work through its Rule of Law initiative in over 50 countries by nearly 500 attorneys and staff to promote independent judiciaries, to establish and support bar associations, to protect human rights advocates, and to fight corruption and impunity is so very vital. That is why statements of the American Bar Association president on issues of importance to our democracy here at home have never been more important, and why I urge you as ABA members and as colleagues to share them with your colleagues, family, and friends in your communities. Our finest moments, the most enduring contributions the legal profession has made to our society over the decades has been when our profession has used its voice and resources for causes about which we speak with authority and which we can impactfully influence. It is our most critical imperative that we never lower our voices when we witness affronts to the independence of the judiciary or denigration of the free press, nor when we see injustice done to those in need, no matter how isolated the target or how popular the deed. Lawyers' advocacy for the unrepresented and the voiceless cannot wax and wane. Our protest of the unconscionable, particularly attacks on our democratic values, as enshrined in our Constitution, cannot surge and then lie fallow. We must continue to give our best to those whom we, the lawyers, have taken an oath to serve. Our work together in the organized bar makes us strong, makes us a broad-based, authoritative, national voice for lawyers in America. The work we do to close the justice gap, to render direct legal services to individuals in need, and to advocate for policies that will drive change is an exemplar for those who see lawyering as a commitment and as a calling, as I know all of you do. And probably most importantly, the work we do together gives hope to everyday people because they know that lawyers and judges are helpers and healers and problem solvers because of the work that you do in your communities on the front line each and every day. I knew my year in preparation and planning and listening and learning would be invaluable. But what I did not anticipate is how quickly it would make me realize that no matter what we do, no matter what we pat ourselves on the back about, or write about, or give speeches about, we need to push ourselves. We need to lead others. We need to do so much more. We need to do our best each and every day for those whom we serve. And we are stronger. We are better lawyers because of it. By working together, all of our bar associations across the country and with our courts, we are stronger. Our profession is stronger, and I submit to you that our democracy is stronger. And working together, we will achieve justice, not just for some, but for all. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes of your time, and I look forward to spending some more time with you this morning. Thank you.
Good to see you. Take care. Thank you very much, President-elect Judy Perry Martinez. We wish you well in your year of leadership of the ABA, and we look forward to a year of cooperation of our two great associations toward the betterment of our members and the profession, and of course, the advancement of the rule of law. Thank you very much, and we'll see, some of us will see you in San Francisco. We look forward to that as well. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the report and recommendations of the Committee on Immigration Representation. It's a resolution report and recommendations recommending a right of counsel in immigration proceedings. The report will be presented by Camille Mackler and Professor Sarah Rogerson, who are the co-chairs of the Committee on Immigration Representation. I see that they're approaching the podium, so anytime you're ready, you may proceed with your report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to present. I'm Camille Mackler. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Immigration Committee. This is my colleague, Sarah Rogerson. We are proposing a report and asking all of you to adopt a resolution calling on New York State to become the first state in the nation to pass a right to counsel for immigrants facing deportation. Simply put, immigrants do not have a guaranteed right to counsel, and too often we see 2-year-old children having to go to immigration court and defend themselves against deportation proceedings. We see too many people who don't even understand the basics of the English language having to argue against a trained government lawyer to be able to remain in their communities. Yes, some are recent arrivals who came here because they were seeking protection, asylum at our borders. Others have been here for 30 years with green cards, with families, with businesses, with homes. Under the current system, under the current administration, enforcement has ramped up to a point that between 2012 and 2018, the number of cases pending in immigration court has doubled. And attorneys are struggling to meet that need and to appear in court on behalf of as many individuals as possible to defend their rights. Because at the end of the day, this is just a matter of due process. We are not asking New York State to grant any immigration benefits or to reform our immigration laws. We are trying to redress serious inequities in a judicial system that is anything but fair. Immigration courts are administrative administrative courts. They're part of the Department of Justice, and they are subject to the political pressures that department has been going through. The judges are employees of that same organization, and they are actually retiring by the droves because they can't handle the pressures that have been put on their jobs, and have been actually pretty outspoken through their union on how they are no longer able to make fair decisions and independent decisions. Providing a lawyer in that context has been proven through investments made in New York City to improve somebody's chance of fighting deportation by 14 times. All that means is that somebody who has a lawyer is 14 times as likely to be able to obtain a benefit they are entitled to under our current laws. If they don't have a lawyer, they are more likely to not get that benefit, to lose, and although they have an opportunity to remain in this country, they will be ordered deported instead because they were facing such a system. In 2017, the American Bar Association put out a report on the state of representation of immigrants and called on the federal government to create a right to counsel for immigrants, recognizing the serious inequities in the system. And the ABA report further told states that until there is any meaningful action from Washington, it is up to states to meet that burden. I'm sorry, not to meet that burden. It is up to states to fill that need because it is in their best interest to do so, because it is 4 million New Yorkers and their family members every single day who live in fear of immigration enforcement. 4 million foreign-born New Yorkers, 4 million immigrant New Yorkers, not 4 million undocumented immigrants. I want to be clear. Immigrants live in every corner of this state. They power the dairy farms that are a massive economic tool in this state and that bring so much revenue to our agricultural sector. They pick the fruits in our fruit farms. They drive the work in our construction sites. They drive the taxis through the streets of New York City. They change the sheets on the beds. Their children go to our schools. They go to our banks. They shop at the same stores. They could be the person sitting next to you who doesn't know if next week their loved one, their parent themselves, will be sitting on a plane forever exiled from a country they have called home and they have contributed to over and over again. To address the sort of the economic benefits and other state benefits of our report and of the idea of providing counsel to immigrants, I want to turn this over to my co-chair, Sarah Rogerson.
Thank you, Camille. I would also note that I'm here in my capacity as an Albany Law School professor, and my job is to train the next generation of New York immigration lawyers. And when they look out and look at all of you, who they look up to very much, and think about, do they have support from the bar for their future goals, for their dreams, for their ambitions, for the valuable work that they're going to contribute to this community? They're looking at this action today to see, do we value immigration lawyers as a state bar? It's not just my students. My students are practicing. When you think about lifting up an immigrant family, you're also thinking about the web of interconnectedness in our court system. When we provide a lawyer to immigrants, we're also creating efficiencies in family court, town and village courts, in our surrogate courts, which handle guardianship cases. When we provide representation to immigrants, we lift up our criminal system, our criminal court system, and create additional efficiencies there. The federal system is set up to create barriers between communication, between the communication between lawyers and all of these different facets of our justice system, and to remove counsel from one critical piece of that, and to place people in detention where even if they have counsel, it's questionable whether or not the access is sufficient, cuts that individual off from the rest of the system, which makes the rest of the system have to work harder to find them. So we're talking about efficiencies across the New York State court system. Additionally, we know that 1 in 4 children in the United States has an undocumented parent. 1 in 4 children in the United States has an undocumented parent. And when you think about New York State and the value that we place on immigration, because we know its benefits, because we were built on its benefits, that disproportionately impacts our state. Watching out for immigrant children means watching out for their families. U.S. citizen children as well, because in a lot of these families we have some children who have status and some children who don't, by virtue of the messed up web of immigration laws that we have. Again, putting my professor hat on, our immigration laws are old, outdated, and really a patchwork that really only came into existence in the early 20th century, and not a lot of people know that. So it's important to think about that. It's important to lift these families up, especially in New York State. And we can talk about additional economic impacts in a positive direction from what we know from the reporting from New York City on the NYFIP representation program that was piloted down there. And we can talk about all of that, and we have statistics to back it up. But at its core, what we're asking this association to do is stand up for due process, to stand up for the rule of law, and to re-inject the rule of law into a system where it has been yanked out literally from under these, not just recent arrivals, but every immigrant New Yorker's feet. We'll take additional questions because I want to make sure we're not going over time, but
Okay.
That concludes.
Did you
our
want to
report.
say anything else, or?
Nope.
Yeah, okay. At this time, I will ask for a motion to approve the resolution. The report and recommendations have been duly moved and seconded. Let's open it up for discussion. Please approach, if you want to speak, please approach the microphone located at the center of the hall, and begin by identifying yourself, as if that's needed in the first instance, and your affiliation.
Michael Miller, immediate past president of the New York State Bar Association. I want to thank Professor Rogerson and Ms. Mackler for giving New York the opportunity to lead the nation back to sanity. These women are heroes of our profession. They are among the very best among us. They do God's work. When the Muslim ban was first announced, they were there at JFK. When the asylum seekers were brought from the southern border to Albany, they immediately put together an amazing effort to make sure that due process was a reality and not just a phrase that we throw around. So thank you so much. I heartily urge support of this important report.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Shriver. I'm a representative from the 9th Judicial District. I want to thank the committee for its very, very good work. And in addition to underscoring the moral imperatives that I think you've so eloquently put out, I want to remind all of us that the sister component of due process in terms of making sure that there's a fair hearing and fair representation, the sister constitutional component to that is one of equal protection. And I would remind all of us what we learned our first year of law school, that subject to strict scrutiny, the highest level of scrutiny that the court applies, one of those classes, of course, is alienage. And so beyond being a moral imperative, it's part of a constitutional mandate that we enact such recommendations. And I think that I would echo what the past president said in terms of setting an example. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Vinnie Doyle, former president, currently slumming with the 8th District. I want to congratulate the committee. Excellent piece of work and very timely. Thank you for bringing this issue to us, and I heartily support it. I note that the ABA position, which is reflected in the resolution, was that there should be a federally funded system and that the state should act sort of in the meantime until the federal option could be enacted. And I wonder whether you would consider, I won't make it now because it's a procedural motion, but I wonder whether you would consider an amendment to reflect in the resolution that the State Bar, New York State Bar, supports that ABA position and feels there should be a federally funded system, but wisely is urging the state to do it in the meantime. So thank you, and please, everyone, vote for this report.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, absolutely, we agree.
Good morning. I'm Lucy Billings from the New York County Lawyers Association and the State Supreme Court. I'm also a member of the Chief Judge's Commission on Access to Justice. I, too, am just echoing the theme of the ABA president-elect and our own immediate past president, Michael Miller. But I believe that we must seize every opportunity to inch forward toward the objective of what is now our fairly long-standing resolution of this association, that every person who needs a lawyer but cannot afford one to fend off the loss of basic essentials of life be provided that desperately needed legal assistance. And we have gained a toehold in New York City with the passage of and the beginning successes of the Universal Access to Legal Services law in eviction proceedings. And we should jump off that toehold and with the political climate in New York that may be ripe for the protection of immigrants, take that next step and keep marching toward the objective of our resolution.
Thank you.
Mike Markowitz, Nassau County Bar Association. First, I want to thank you. I had the opportunity to read your proposed resolution and the backup information. And I want to be as respectful as I can to you. I come from a family of immigrants who all came here legally. My in-laws came here from Israel legally, worked hard. My grandparents came here from Hungary legally, worked hard. And reading this and talking about all immigrants and putting together people who came here legally and worked hard and became citizens, and people who come here illegally and ignore the rule of law and then are afforded the same rights as people who come here legally, it's very upsetting to me. Very, very upsetting to me. So my first request is on your proposed resolution, when you talk about immigrants, it's really undocumented individuals. That's my opinion. Because otherwise, you're turning around and people who come here and they want to make it, but legally here, I think you're really giving them short change, and I think it's a misnomer. And instead of saying I understand immigrants means everybody. Anybody who comes to the United States is an immigrant. But I think you're lumping in people who are trying to come here legally with people who are coming here illegally. And I think that that's wrong. And I think it really should be undocumented individuals.
So could I just address that first point?
You wait. Hold on.
I only have 3 minutes.
Let Mr. Markowitz finish his comments, and I will give you, as the presenters, an opportunity to respond.
Okay.
The other thing is, I agree with you about federal law, okay? And I think that federal law is wrong, okay? And this is a federal issue, okay? And really, maybe our efforts should be going toward the ABA and to change the federal law and to work toward that instead of using New York State taxpayer dollars toward this issue. It really should be federal taxpayer dollars toward this issue. And for those two I understand everybody should have representation. It's a federal issue. We should acknowledge that, and it should be done through the ABA and not through us.
Okay. Mr. Markowitz, thank you very much for your remarks. I will now give the opportunity to the presenters to a brief response.
I fully appreciate your comments, and I thank you for expressing your reservations. One point to note, and I'm putting my professor hat on again, not to lecture, but to just a point of information. A lot of people in removal proceedings are in fact documented. A lot of people who are detained are in fact documented. And it's very difficult to carve out documented versus undocumented when you're talking about deportation as an ultimate solution, which in many, many cases, documented or undocumented, is the equivalent of a death sentence, particularly in the case of asylum seekers who don't have to have advance permission before arriving at our borders and seeking safety, and who receive no documentation in the interim while they pursue their claim. On the second note, in terms of it being a federal issue, the federal government has also, in those federal immigration laws, carved out specific and delegated specific tasks to the state. So, for example, our family court system has been delegated by the federal government to make certain findings with respect to special immigrant juveniles who come here, technically undocumented, who have been abused, abandoned, or neglected by one or both parents. It also impacts the state courts and state policing. U visas for victims of violent crime who may be undocumented here, but who we need to come forward with evidence of that crime. The state and local law enforcement agents have been delegated by the federal law the obligation to sign off on what's called a Supplement B, which basically says that person has cooperated in the investigation of the crime committed against them. So these are just a handful of examples of how states have been burdened by the federal system and how we as states then must respond. And then also of the milieu of individuals that we have facing deportation proceedings. But I very much appreciate your comments, and I appreciate the opportunity to respond.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll proceed with comments from the floor. Mr. Hernandez?
Hermes Fernandez, elected delegate from the 3rd District. I rise simply to applaud the report. It's very necessary. I believe that this is an issue that lawyers must speak out on. This is one of those issues, and I'm going to paraphrase our president, right? This is one of these issues that come before lawyers, and if lawyers are not the ones to call for this, who will? This is, again, paraphrasing our president, and who quoted the Chenango County Courthouse, let justice be done. Lawyers must call for representation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Effman.
Thank you, Norman Effman, Vice President, 8th Judicial District. I applaud the report. This association has a long history, and especially in the last decade or so, in dealing with access to justice, to ensure that people who cannot afford lawyers have lawyers. We in this room especially recognize the effectiveness of adequate, competent, zealous representation in ensuring that rights of individuals facing loss of liberty, loss of property, loss of dignity, mandate representation. To have an individual speak on their own behalf with language difficulties, with age difficulties, is simply un-American, no matter who we are. If you face the justice system and justice is to be done, you need the assistance of a competent attorney. We have always stood for that. The economics involved are, of course, significant, but that is not our issue. Our issue is justice. Justice must be done. People facing loss of liberty need lawyers. We all know that. We must do what is right. I applaud the resolution and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Effman. Ms. Lindenauer.
Susan Lindenauer, representative of New York County Lawyers Association from the 1st Judicial District. I applaud the report. I think the report speaks to the highest values of our profession. I also want to talk a bit about those who are here lawfully and those who are not. The immigration laws in this country are not the product of our best and brightest moments. We had an immigration system that at one point excluded people who were Chinese. We had a system that was introduced in the 1920s to specifically exclude Eastern European Jews and Southern Italians. That system really was responsible for the death of millions of Jews in World War II because they could not come to this country. They were excluded. This system is still in place in another way. I think that while one might say, since the immigration system is one that is controlled by the federal courts and the federal laws, one could say it ought to be something we leave to others. I don't think we are acting as members of a noble profession or as New Yorkers whose society, for the most part, was built by immigrants. I really applaud the report, and I don't think we can afford to look ourselves in the mirror and not support this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lindenauer. Before I proceed, I'm going to call you again, Mr. Doyle. I want to advise you that at yesterday's meeting, the Executive Committee voted to approve this resolution. Susan, did you want to speak?
Sure. Yeah, I wanted just to make a quick comment.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Identify yourself.
I'm terribly sorry. Susan Harper, Women in Law section. Women in Law section. First of all, I applaud the report, and I think that we all should be thinking about this issue as not being a legal immigrant or illegal immigrant issue, but the fact of a human rights issue that I often have met lots of immigration attorneys who've told me stories. I just remember this one guy who told me a story on a bus about a 6-year-old didn't know how to speak English language, and how they didn't have any representation, and how horrible this issue is. It's a real issue, and people need to be represented. And I really applaud you. And we all need to get behind this report and support it. Thank you.
Okay. The chair recognizes former President Doyle. Did you wish to make an amendment, a motion for an amendment at this time?
I do wish to make a motion for an amendment. I would consider it a friendly amendment, but I know Robert's rules don't recognize friendly amendments. So the motion to amend would be to
By the way, Scott's rules do. So.
Okay. And Scott's in charge, so.
Right.
Well, here's the amendment I would offer, a last resolved clause that would read, resolved that the New York State Bar Association supports the position articulated by the American Bar Association that there should be a federally funded system of appointed counsel for indigent respondents in removal proceedings, but urges the New York State Legislature to act in the meantime in light of the significance of the rights and principles involved.
Thank you. Okay, there's a motion on the floor to amend the main resolution. Is there a second to that motion? Okay. First of all, do the sponsors wish to accept that as a friendly amendment?
Absolutely. We do.
Okay. Is there any further discussion from the floor concerning the proposed amendment? Okay.
Claire Goodikins, past president. Just a question. I'm not sure. Maybe I misheard it. Vinny, did you say to act or to enact a statutory requirement under New York State law? I just wasn't clear what the amendment was, because I think it's very important that we charge our legislature to enact a statute. Act just sounds a little vague.
Claire, why don't we have it read back so we can, everybody, can we just read it so that everybody knows exactly what it is we're voting on? Do you have it over here? Okay. Or bring it to me and I'll read it back.
It's not necessary. I didn't understand this was a second paragraph. I thought this replaced the paragraph.
No, it's a second resolve clause.
I withdraw the comment.
Okay, never mind. Okay, there's a motion duly seconded on the floor to amend the resolution. There being no further discussion, let's bring it to a vote. Remember, you're voting now on the amendment only. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? In the judgment of the chair, the motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Doyle. Okay, Mr. Markowitz, did you wish to propose any motions at this time? You indicated that you might, and I'll give you the opportunity to do so. If you want to do so. You don't? Okay. Very good. So we now have before us an amended resolution for consideration and vote. As I indicated, the pre-amended version was approved yesterday by the Executive Committee, but now it's your opportunity to weigh in on it. So let me call for a vote. All in favor of the resolution as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Okay. The ayes have it. The resolution carries. Thank you all very much. And thank you in particular to our presenters for their excellent work.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we have an informational report, and by that it means that no vote will be taken at this time. As you heard earlier, President Greenberg has established a special committee on association structure and governance. The committee is chaired by the indefatigable and altogether terrific former president of this association, Glenn Lauke, and Glenn will now address the House with his report on his efforts to date.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fellow leaders of the bar, as President Greenberg has told us, it is time. It is time that we turn our attention and take an examination of the structures and operations of this association to make sure that we get it in shape for the future. I think he's outlined a very compelling vision for us, and it's our duty to make sure that this association is up to the task. Now, I think this is a first. I think this is the first time that a committee has presented before it has its first meeting. So, but I think that that's two things. Number one, that's a function of the importance of this issue. And secondly, this issue, of course, and it's naturally, has engendered a tremendous amount of interest and buzz. So I wanted to just give this as an introduction of where we are going for now, because I think that it's important that everybody realize that both myself and the committee are going into this with no preconceived notions, and that's going to be a very open process. Now, I stated we presented to the executive committee, both Dave Miranda with his committee and myself before the executive committee yesterday. And I was asked whether there were any limits on what we were going to look at. And the answer is not really, because everything is interrelated here. The hard job for our committee will be to decide exactly what is a structural issue and what is not a structural issue. You know, not everything lends itself to kind of a change in structure, although that's the impulse to do, you know, if you want to change, sometimes that's the first impulse. So I want to assure everybody that's not the case. But I also want to just say that we're approaching this with the attitude that it's not going to be change for the sake of change. You know, a lot of this takes a lot of deep consideration, and we don't even know that we truly understand the dynamics undergoing the association now. But what we do understand is that there are areas of what the association does that are not perhaps adequately supported and addressed by this association. So this is going to be very short, because I just want to say that this has engendered, you know, judging from my conversations today, yesterday, and the week before, a tremendous amount of interest, obviously. What I'm going to invite you to do, and I may regret this, of course, is to give me your thoughts. I mean, everybody. I think it's really important that we as a committee understand and get input from all of you. All of you are the leaders here. You are all in different parts of the association. You all have views as to how things are working and how they're not working. And that's all important for us to understand. What the committee's job to do is to focus very clearly on those issues that we feel are important and that can be improved with a structural change of some sort. We will also look at leadership, of course, and that's part of it. Leadership and structure are two different things. And, sometimes they're inextricably intertwined. We will try to look at that very hard. I just wanted to let you know that, and I'm asking the staff, that if anybody wants to get a hold of me at any time, you're welcome to do so. Contact information, I've said, please release my contact information, my mobile phone, anything. Please get in touch with me. I think we do want to hear from you. We will be moving ahead and establishing a framework of how we're going to consider all of this, but the important thing is to hear from you. Now, the last thing I will say is that change is not easy. It never is. But the important thing is that all of us, I know, are going in the same direction. We want our association to be the most effective organization that we can possibly make it. It's our fiduciary duty to do so. And there will be hard decisions to be made up ahead, but let's make them all together. So we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn, and with the thanks of the House, we look forward to the continuing reports of your activities. The next item on the agenda is the report of the Women in the Law section, and we have with us the immediate past chair of that section, Susan Harper, who will wend her way to the microphone and deliver her, well, actually to the podium, and to deliver her report. Thank you, Susan. And take your time. Don't trip and fall on the way up.
Which way does it go? This? Thank you. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much for inviting me to join you here today. I'm really pleased to return once again as an official member of the House of Delegates. I'm official. They gave me a ribbon. Today I want to talk to you about our progress of our Women in Law section. And so many exciting things have occurred since I last visited you in November. A year ago today, this is our one-year anniversary. I traveled here to Cooperstown to ask you for your support to launch a Women in Law section and to advise you that the moment was now, given the sheer number of women in our great profession, the need for greater advocacy for women under the law, and to lift the cap of our 50-person committee on women in law. And so we did it. And thanks to your support and confidence in us, we're now celebrating our first-year anniversary, and what a year it's been. We kicked off the year, if you recall, last year, when we launched the section back in November, we completed our bylaws, and we had hundreds of people, I mean hundreds of people, within just a couple of months come and join us. However, as I reported back in November, many of those new members were signed up under a free membership strategy. And so one of the issues that I was very concerned about when I last spoke to you was that, are they going to convert over? And so thanks to a really robust communications campaign, thanks to Dan Weiler and his team, came out with this great journal. We focused on women in the law, showcasing lots of women in the Bar Association, participating on Dave Miranda's podcast, participating in lots of other media opportunities. I am pleased to say that because of that progress, we now have almost 700 members on our roster. And that conversion ratio was high. So a majority of our members now are paying members, and it's an amazing accomplishment as a result of the team effort by all in the New York State Bar. And it's because of this body's decision that we now have the power to expand our work and our support of our mission of supporting and advancing women in the legal profession and all women under the law. And so since Hank is building this virtual bar center, I thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about my journey and our journey as a section this year.
We received a lot of media coverage in the beginning of the year, just in terms of our own annual meeting, which we called Your Seat at the Table. And this particular annual meeting, coupled with the media outreach that we created, really resonated well. I had people who attended our annual meeting for the first time, someone who actually came over to me, who came from New Hampshire, and said, I received, the journal that said the moment was now. She says, and it spoke to me, and I said, I had to get in the car and come here and be part of this. And so throughout the year, we've been hearing a lot of things like that, about hearing about how what we're saying and what we're doing is resonating with our members. And that's very important because it shows the value that we are providing to our members. And in our annual meeting, we really focus a lot on our diversity and inclusion initiative. We had the Corporation Council with us, Brad Karp, who is chairman of Paul Weiss. Judge Billings also spoke, and so we're very excited about that. We also had a great legislative panel. We also continue doing our awards program, Kay Crawford Murray Award, Ruth Shapiro Award. But one thing that's really great about these sorts of programs too, it's re-engaging our members. You may recall last year when I asked for your support, there were a lot of people that stood up and provided comments, and some of these people said, well, I was a former chair of Seawell. I was involved with Seawell. But now they really can be involved in a more meaningful way, and I'm seeing that at events, that people are coming back and they're really participating. And that's very exciting as well. So in the legislative area, if you recall when I came to you last year, I said we were really resource strapped. There was so much legislation coming out that is impacting women that we could not keep up with it. And so by changing our structure now, we now have about 20 or 25 people on our legislative committee, whereas before it was about 5. And under our legislative chair's leadership, Denise Bricker and Sarah Simpson, we weren't just able to complete just one memo, we completed 5 memos this year. And this was so exciting. This is an enormous progress on our part. And we really needed to have this bandwidth because of the way that the legislature is set up right now, with it being a Democratic legislature and being a Democratic governor. The legislation was really flying off the shelf. We really had to move really quickly. And I really commend our entire team for working on that. So we supported different bills this year. We supported a pay equity bill. We supported a cybersecurity bill, salary disclosures. We supported another one on women's privacy rights and consent to pelvic exams when it's anesthetized or unconscious. And yes, it's sort of unfathomable, but some medical professionals and students have been performing pelvic exams on women when we are unconscious and are most vulnerable. I know, it's hard to believe. Earlier this year, and we've been working towards this since this next issue, since we were Seawell, we worked on constitutional equality. Okay, and this is actually a picture from our annual meetings, one of my favorite pictures from the annual meeting, of the enthusiasm of putting women into the Constitution. It's hard to believe New York State is the cradle of women's rights. And New York State doesn't include the word sex in their Constitution. And so the Committee on Law, as well as the section on women in law, worked on a memo which we presented to the New York State Bar Executive Committee, which they approved. And now we are working on our support towards constitutional equality. And we're very excited and very proud about it. We started new committees. Gender Issues Committee is one of our committees that we're receiving a lot of enthusiasm for. This one is all about policy positions, about gender equality. They're working on issues of sexual harassment and laws impacting victims. In February, we participated in the first sexual harassment hearing at the New York State Legislature. This is the actual photo when I walked in there, and this is what we were seeing. This is a really historic meeting that occurred, and thanks to the New York State Bar, to Dan Weiler's work, and to Mike Miller, that we were there and we had a seat at the table where we had an opportunity to talk. We were there for about 11 hours. This is a photo of my participation there. But it was so exciting that the New York State Bar was there, because let me tell you something, they had a lot of questions of us about how they should be approaching these sorts of issues on sexual harassment and everything around it. So this was very exciting. And another thing that was why it was so important for us now to be very active in this area is that in addition to the Democratic legislature, the composition of the legislature has changed. So 4 out of the 6 committee chairs convening the hearing were women. New York State, as everybody knows, just elected their first Attorney General, who's a woman, and the state Senate is now led by a woman who was the first female legislative leader in state history. So you can appreciate the fact that now women leaders are really taking their seat at the table, or in the forefront, and driving a lot of issues and legislation that impact women, families, and all of us. So that was very exciting. Our Trailblazers program, we kicked off our first Trailblazers program, and this was led by our 2 programming chairs, Cheryl Gallo, Laura Solem. And this program, where we focused on having the New York Attorney General, I think this was probably one of her first big feature events too. She gave remarks. We sat down for a fireside chat with her. She shared with us just what drove her to become a leader today, and all the different work that she's working on in her office, as well as her initiatives that are impacting women. So it was a very exciting time for us. This year we rolled out 7 different additional committees from our CWIL committee. One of our new committees, our Reports Section Surveys Committee, headed up by Margaret Soa, who's all the way to the right, I guess would be to the left, if you're looking to the left, and Vita Lifton are working hard to promote voting rights. And as you've just heard, the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment is coming up, actually in June, on June 4th. That was the 100th anniversary of Congress passing the right to women having the right to vote. And then the 100th anniversary being ratified is coming up. So we're very excited about our suffrage exhibit. It's been around since 2017, since New York granted women the right to vote. It's right now in the New York Supreme Court at 60 Center Street. They held a dedication ceremony and invited us to come and speak about it. I was very excited to participate in that, as well as with our current chair, Terry Mazur, and we got a chance to talk about women's history and just our role in history that really is often just neglected and not taught about at all at the schools. And now our suffrage exhibit is now, we're getting lots of requests from different courts to participate, and they want our suffrage exhibit. Right now, the Bronx Supreme Court is interested, the Appellate Division is interested in it, other libraries have asked us about it, so we're very excited about our suffrage exhibit, which is the New York State Bar suffrage exhibit. So it's something really great happening. We're also publishing a survey shortly, a survey that's going to be coming out shortly, and as well as a newsletter. Our General Counsel's Committee, this is a committee that was really set up to deal and brainstorm with women's issues, in the General Counsel's area. They held a fabulous sponsorship event on May 21st with the Center of Talent Innovation, addressed ways in which we can all support and advance women in the workplace. And it was very interesting and very enlightening. One thing that I learned about from the Center for Talent of Innovation, which is a very, very well-known organization in the business world and driving sponsorship. And the fact of the matter, she says, that in the legal world, this is not a concept that is widely well known. And it was obvious from just when we sort of asked the people who were in the room if they were aware of the concept of sponsorship and how that all works, and they weren't. And so I think we need a lot of work done in that area. Our Champions Committee, this is our committee that we have created to engage men and to help and support and advance women. This is led by Deborah Kay. We held our first Drinks and Dialogues, which is basically a roundtable program. Basically, it means you'll get 20 people in a room, you'll have some drinks, you'll have some food, and you'll talk about an issue of the day that's probably controversial. The issue that we all spoke about was the Pence Rule. And for many of you may not be aware what the Pence Rule means. It's our vice president's rule in which he maintains that he will not meet with a woman one-on-one without his wife with him.
And so this was a very lively discussion. We had different levels of individuals there, from general counsels, the clients, to young associates, and it was very interesting to hear everybody's perspective on these different things. And it's a safe environment where we can now have takeaways. And we have created an article that I'm going to be coming out on that too. The team also created a single malt chocolate event. This was another way that we are engaging individuals. And all of these are ways to drive new membership to the New York State Bar through our section. And to help just support our mission of our section. So our single malt chocolate event was a Scotch tasting, a chocolate tasting event. It was very, very well received. We had a lot of people show up for this event, and it was a very bad rainy night. I'm so glad they all showed up. And we had a chance to honor Mike Miller and his great support of our section too. So we're having a great time on our section. We're having lots of fun. This is a fun section. We're also, serious too. We have a lot of things and a lot of work that we're working on. You'll see there, that's right to your right. That's Terry Mazer, that's Carol Villagos, and Terry's our chair, Carol's our chair-elect, and there's Cheryl, who's our annual meeting chair, and also I showed you Margaret already. And so we're going to be rolling out a couple of other committees. They're in formation, but they're not fully operable right now. One of them is our Partners Committee, our Emerging Leaders Committee, as well as our Law Firm Equity Committee, and we're doing some work on women in the association as well. We've had great teamwork this past year. Everybody was very enthusiastic. We had great section liaison from the EC, Carol Sigmund, Marilyn Flood. We had Tiffany Bardwell, as well as Sarah Gold, who was extremely helpful. And so this was such an amazing opportunity. One thing that was really amazing to watch when you're creating something really from scratch and building it is to watch just people step up to the plate. There were a lot of people who were at first a little bit shaky. I'm not really sure I could be the leader, blah, blah, blah. And then pushing them along and seeing how they really stepped up to the plate. The other thing that was very exciting is to hear members saying that what we're doing is resonating with them. And the facts that matter, once again, that we are, open and that they can come and join us. And that beforehand where we had to say no, we can say yes now. And to see that there's women and men who want to join us and who really want to be part of our success. So with all these developments, it's been such an exciting and energizing time for us, and I want to again thank you, all of you. This would have happened without your support, and I could have never imagined what an amazing year and the experiences that we've had as a section. I'm going to leave you now with one of my favorite pictures. This is not a picture from this past year. This was a picture from previously when we were CWIL. And it's a time when I think Claire was president, and she had us all over. And many of these women were the forerunners who helped build CWIL and helped build that organization and are leaders of this particular body right now. And I want to thank all of you and thank you for your support. And I'm looking forward to a great second year. We have so much exciting stuff on our plate. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, and congratulations on the completion of your first anniversary of the section, and much continued success. It was a memorable vote 1 year ago, and we look forward to more great things in the future. Thank you. At this time, we have the report of the New York Bar Foundation to be delivered by the president of the foundation, Leslie Rosenthal. Leslie, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, everyone. I love that photo. 3 of those amazing women actually sit on the board of the New York Bar Foundation at this time, so talk about cultivating leaders. The foundation, as you may know, is the charitable arm of the New York State Bar Association. We make grants to support innovative law-related programs to legal services organizations and bar associations all across the state. You, the members of the House of Delegates, are automatically members of the foundation. Many of you are about to receive an invitation to become a fellow of the foundation in recognition of your outstanding professional achievement in the top 1% of the profession in this state. By accepting this invitation, which comes with a modest financial contribution and no time commitment, you exemplify the spirit of caring, the best of our helping profession. You can go on to the next slide. Today, I would like to fill you in on some current fundraising and grant-making activities, orient you to our financials as requested by our association leadership, and then pull back the camera lens and discuss the bigger picture. Next. And the one after that. In addition to the Fellows and the Circles of Giving program, which is at the heart of our contributed revenue, we are launching the Firm Giving campaign. There are several giving levels from $1,000 to $50,000, and firms will be recognized on the new donor wall, which we look forward to installing at the Bar Center just outside the Great Hall, in a place of high visibility. Information is available at your places and also at the foundation table next door. We've already had several firms sign up in advance, and I would love to see firms represented in this room to join this effort. Next. This is the future of public interest law in New York. We are so proud that Chief Judge Janet D. Fiore has entrusted the foundation with administering the Catalyst Fund, which now stands at over $1.2 million. The foundation administers a paid summer fellowship program for law students interested in public interest work. In this third year, we have students from all 15 law schools in New York State, the largest cohort to date, 57 students totaling $142,000 from Catalyst and more than $500,000 from the school stipends. This is the future of public interest law in New York. Next. I'm sure you've seen the attractive gift baskets right next door showing off the best produce and the best of the intellectual life in each of our judicial districts across our great state. I hope you will bid generously because 100% of these proceeds go to the grant program. The items include sports tickets, jazz festivals, spa days, wine, and our new board book club. In past years, we have raised over $30,000 with this initiative, and we would like to make this year our best year. Please place your final bids now. Bidding closes at noon. And please be sure to pick up your baskets if you're the winning bidder. Thanks to Emily Francina, who masterminded this auction idea, our foundation executive, Deb Ospelmeyer, for putting it all together, and to the mighty 5th Judicial District that has submitted 7, count them, 7 baskets to auction. Next. Over to financials. Next. Okay. So where does the revenue come from and how do we spend it? Unrestricted contributions, which are the blue slice in each of these pies, were up 4% in 2018 over the prior year. This category includes member and fellow contributions, as well as our annual campaign, memorial tributes, and other contributions. Our restricted contributions, the orange slice, as you can see, those are lumpier. These include large one-time gifts such as Cypre Awards, newly established endowed funds, and notably in 2017, the infusion of $1.14 million of unexpended funds from the Janet D. Fiore for District Attorney re-election campaign after she was appointed the Chief Judge. The foundation owns the Bar Center and receives regular rental income from the association. That's the gray slice that you see. That essentially covers our expenses, freeing us up to re-grant essentially every dollar of contributions that we raise. The foundation's endowment, the yellow slice, is invested similar to the association's investments and receives similar annual returns. On to program grants, distributions, and expenses. Grants to New York State-based legal services and legal educational organizations are the foundation's primary activity. We are pleased to have delivered close to $1 million in grants and distributions in 2018. Those are the dark blue, the orange, and the gray slices. The previous year's even larger distribution total was through a sizable Cypre award that we administered on behalf of the federal courts through the offices of Chief Judge Colleen McMahon of the Southern District of New York. We continue to seek Cypre opportunities and would appreciate referrals from class action litigators as well as members of the judiciary who are here with us today. The board of the foundation, many members of whom are in this room, through its grants committee, considers about 120 grant applications this past year. In 2018, we invested in grant-making software that enabled our committee to review applications online rather than receiving boxes of documents for review. It also enabled potential grantees to apply online, making the administration of the grant program more efficient overall. Next. To bring you up to speed for the current calendar year, our unrestricted contributions, that's the dark blue slice, are up another 11.7% over the same period last year. We look forward to continuing on that trajectory with help from people in this room and the many other generous members of New York's legal community who believe in the power of the law to transform lives and improve communities in our state. Next. Our expenses this year essentially track last year's expenses with unrestricted, restricted grants. Those are the dark blue and the orange slices, by far the largest category of our expenditures. And I want you to note this especially. Our grant application period for the January 2020 grant cycle opens on August 1st of this year. I hate to say that, but that's only 6 weeks away. And the grant application period is only 6 weeks itself, closing on September 15th. So if you are involved with a law-related charity or bar association in New York that you think may qualify for a grant award to support an innovative way of delivering legal services to people in need or educating the public about the law, please refer them to the Foundation's webpage to get more information and fill out a grant application. And the page is tnybf.org. That stands for the New York Bar Foundation.org. We are hoping for applications from all 13 judicial districts this year. And last, the big picture. So over this coming year, the Foundation will continue to implement our 3-year strategic plan covering 2018 to 2020, the theme of which is fostering the rule of law in New York State. Our board has set a goal to measurably improve the perception and the reality of state of law adherence in this state, and we seek to measure progress toward that goal. We have studied the areas in the most critical need, and the data point us to improving accessibility and affordability of civil justice. Therefore, the Foundation's grant making is prioritizing funding for civil legal services programs across the state, specifically those that assist with the essentials of life: child support, consumer debt, housing, evictions, foreclosures, homelessness, family matters, domestic violence, children, family stability, access to health care, access to education, and subsistence income, including wages, disability, and other benefits. The fellows of the Foundation are our lifeblood. Please respond affirmatively if you receive an invitation letter. The only commitment is a modest financial contribution, not a time commitment, although we are working to engage fellows more fully in the work of the Foundation. We invite you to join us in these endeavors in ways that are meaningful to you, make a contribution, answer the call to become a fellow, attend a district event, lead your section to establish or continue funding a fellowship, connect us to Cypre opportunities, make purchases through the Amazon Smile that designates the foundation as your charitable recipient at no cost to you, and please consider establishing an endowment fund or making a legacy gift that will perpetuate our shared values as New York lawyers forever. Thank you.
Leslie, thank you very much for your fine report, which is accepted with the thanks of the House, and thanks, of course, for the good work of the foundation, and long may it continue. Thank you very much. At this time, we come to the report and recommendations of the task force on the role of paralegals. This task force was appointed by immediate past President Michael Miller to update the 1997 guidelines for the utilization of paralegals, to explore relevant issues and make recommendations for best practices for the use of paralegals. The report will be presented by task force co-chairs Vincent Ted Chang and Margaret Phillips, and at this time I turn the podium over to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Well, there are nearly 300,000 paralegals in the United States. It's compared to approximately 800,000 lawyers. But the growth rate of the paralegal industry far outstrips that of the growth rate in the employment of attorneys. Nearly all of us deal with paralegals on a regular basis. Nonetheless, it's been nearly 25 years since NYSBA last looked at the ethical and practical implications of the relationship between attorneys and paralegals. Immediate past President Michael Miller and former President Mary Ann Sakamoto Friedman figured that 25 years was long enough and that it's time for us to take another hard look at the issue. Fortunately, I was teamed up with Professor Margaret Phillips from Damon College in Buffalo, who runs a paralegal studies program. She teaches future paralegals and writes on the subject of the paralegal profession. And then President Miller added a spectacular team of ethics experts. Lou Tesser I saw over there, Sarah Jo Hamilton, and Marty Minkowitz I know is somewhere in here. We also added a number of experienced practitioners from throughout the state, including Jane Gerbini, Sarah Gold, Peter Levy, Tara Ann Pleat, Violet Samuels, and Carol Sigmund. And a great executive committee liaison, Bill Russell. We thank President Greenberg for continuing and supporting our initiative. NYSBA's membership chair, Tom Maroney, I saw him in the back of the room somewhere, consulted with paralegals from throughout the state who are leaders in their local and statewide paralegal associations. The group did surveys and provided us with valuable input on membership questions, in particular the issue of whether NYSBA should create a special membership class of non-voting paralegal members. Our report covered 4 different points. We'll talk about them very briefly. We know we're standing between you and lunch. First, our report examines the 1975 and 1999 guidelines for the ethical use of paralegals that were issued by NYSBA. Many of you probably don't know those guidelines exist, but we thought it was high time to re-examine them in light of developments since 1995. We largely reaffirmed the prior rules and updated the commentary on those rules to reflect the intervening changes in the last 25 years. Secondly, in addition to the ethical standards, we urge steps to explore the use of paralegals to help close the justice gap, which has been discussed from time to time this morning. While we must keep unauthorized practice restrictions in mind, we urge the use of paralegals to provide services to underserved legal communities through such programs as New York's Navigator program, and to look to extend that program outside of the housing court context in New York City. Third, we consider the need for new regulatory and licensure regimes for paralegals to regulate their credentials and practice. We conclude at this time that mandatory statutory regulation is not warranted, but that voluntary certification through such programs and organizations as the National Federation of Paralegal Associations should be encouraged. Finally, and this was probably the flashpoint for the report in the executive committee, we considered adding a membership category for paralegals and creation of a paralegal division at NYSBA. Margaret will talk about that topic and also about the regulatory topic. I'll address the ethics issues first. As I mentioned, we were blessed with a number of the foremost ethics experts in the state. We took a hard look at the 1976 and 1995 ethical guidelines, which again, most of you probably didn't even know existed. I didn't before I embarked on this project. Our task force analyzed new ethics cases, the 2009 New York Rules of Professional Conduct, and changes to other principles during the last 25 years. Despite all of these changes to the landscape in legal ethics, we believe that the core principles, such as the governing core principle against the unauthorized practice of law and the requirement for fairly strict attorney supervision of paralegals, remains essentially unchanged during that 25-year period, and our ethical guidelines reaffirm those core principles. We updated the case law support for and largely affirmed the need for rules regarding the need for confidentiality, professional independence, disclosure to clients of a paralegal's non-attorney status, and the need to avoid conflicts of interest. Our report also devotes a lot of time and attention to the use of paralegals to close the justice gap. Again, something that was discussed at various points this morning. As our report explains, and as we all know, most disadvantaged clients cannot easily afford an attorney and often have problems that do not require the expense of a full-fledged attorney. Closing the justice gap is, of course, a core mission here at NYSBA and at other bar associations that we represent across the state. Our report refers us to recent research on the New York Navigator program. That's a program in New York Housing Court. The research was conducted by the National Center of State Courts and the ABA Foundation. And this research is pretty powerful. It concludes that the use of non-attorney personnel to provide services to underserved populations is an approach that holds considerable promise and as to which, at a minimum, additional study is needed. Paralegals have been used to good effect in programs serving underserved populations in Utah, California, Washington, and New York. Just a couple of results from the Navigator program. It's a long report, but a couple of high-level results. That litigators who used Navigators were 56% more likely than unassisted litigants to say that they were able to tell their side of the story. Litigants assisted by Navigators asserted twice as many defenses as those who didn't have such support. And those who used Navigators were 87% more likely than unassisted litigants to have their defenses recognized and addressed by the court. So this is pretty powerful empirical evidence. We urge the close monitoring of these programs to determine their efficacy and whether or not these programs can be applied to areas outside of New York City and to areas of law outside of housing law. I'd like to turn the floor over to my great co-chair, Margaret Phillips, who will address the last 2 points of our report.
Thank you, Vince. On the membership issue, I think Judy Martinez was very correct that we are stronger together and we accomplish more together, right? So the American Bar Association and the bar associations of such jurisdictions as Connecticut, Montana, New Mexico, Nevada, Texas, Florida, Indiana, Michigan, North Carolina, Utah, Vermont, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Ohio already permit paralegals to join their bar associations as auxiliary members, often at a lower dues than paid by attorneys. We believe that NYSBA should follow the leads of these jurisdictions and should create a membership class for paralegals and a paralegal division to provide continuing support for paralegals and lawyers interested in the use of paralegals. In particular, the division can provide ongoing and further study regarding many of the issues that we discuss in the report. We have learned that paralegals are indeed interested in joining NYSBA. The paralegal leaders in Tom Maroney's subcommittee, membership subcommittee, took the idea of paralegal membership back to their local associations, and across the board, people were interested, and they received a lot of positive response. Most notably, our report identifies areas for further study, such as the need to study whether increased paralegal certification and regulation is actually worthwhile. In addition, as Vince mentioned, we in the nation need to study further uses of paralegals to close the justice gap. A paralegal division could help us do this.
Already throughout the state, probably many of you know, paralegal associations and individual paralegals are behind a lot of pro bono efforts and clinics. We believe the paralegal division could also provide a clearinghouse for the concerns and interests of paralegals and provide ways for them to network with NYSBA's experienced attorneys, as well as a way to bring us their concerns and their goals so we can all kind of increase our effectiveness. We know that increased effectiveness is also good for our profitability and our bottom line. We leave for future decision makers such issues as the composition and the mandate of paralegal-oriented committees and the level of dues to be charged to paralegal members. Finally, our report reviewed national trends in mandatory state or local regulation of paralegals. You may have seen these issues coming up in the news a lot. Washington is one of the first states to have limited licensed legal technicians. And indeed, it's been a controversial issue. We note that regulatory regimes have been studied and rejected in a number of states, most notably Wisconsin, Florida, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Washington, Indiana, South Carolina, and South Dakota. In those states, attorneys often opposed mandatory regulatory and licensure regimes because they would restrict attorneys' freedom to make hiring decisions and to regulate the qualifications of and the conduct of their paralegals. We took those admonitions to heart and do not at this time recommend mandatory regulation or licensure. While further study might generate evidence that paralegals are not being adequately supervised or that they sometimes are not qualified to fill the roles they do fill, at this point we didn't find any of that research and we're unaware of any research. In the absence of that evidence, we are reluctant to recommend stringent regulations that would limit the career options of those who wish to enter the paralegal profession. In some states, however, voluntary licensure regimes have been adopted, such as in Texas, Florida, Kentucky, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Utah. A number of state bar associations have also adopted voluntary certification programs. In these instances, both the court and the bar association programs generally permit paralegals to call themselves certified if they meet requirements such as a written examination or certain educational requirements according to these private organizations. You may be familiar with NALA, which is the National Association for Legal Assistance, or NIFPA, which is the National Federation of Paralegal Associations, which tends to be more common in the Northeast. These states that have done the voluntary certification include Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Indiana. About 1,000 paralegal education programs are operating across the nation, 300 of which are approved by the ABA, and 300 of which are members of the American Association for Paralegal Education. We urge now, at least in the short term, a focus on such voluntary programs with further study of mandatory programs for possible adoption in the future. We believe that the Paralegal Division, if it's approved, could assist us in the study, as could future iterations of the task force. And that's our report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much to both of you. Before I entertain a motion, I just want to correct one thing that Vince said. This report is not, I repeat, not the only thing standing between you and lunch. There are several other agenda items which will require your careful consideration and attention, and it's not until you hear the gavel come down that you will be released. But don't worry, we're doing well on time, and we should get you out of here in a reasonably prompt fashion. That having been said, I will now entertain a motion for approval of the report and recommendations. Second? Okay, the motion has been duly made and seconded. I will tell you that at yesterday's meeting, the Executive Committee voted to approve the report and recommendations. We will now move to a discussion. Should you wish to be heard, please approach the microphone as former President Ostertag has done. Identify yourself and your constituency, and you shall be heard.
I am a thank you. I am a long past president of this association. And I am wholly in support of paralegalism and paralegals. I have what I hope will be a friendly motion, an amendment to make to the guidelines two of the guidelines, if I may. And I must say that over the course of 30 years ago or better, I championed, together with a few people, paralegalism in this state, before this association, in this room, and successfully so. And I am still no less supportive today than I was then. Unfortunately, however, I have heard, perhaps hundreds of times, or read references by paralegals to the people they are serving as their clients. Sometimes it happens accidentally, sometimes it happens not so accidentally. And I would like to clarify guidelines number 1 and I believe number 8 to make it completely clear to paralegals and to anybody before whom they speak or to whom they write that they are paralegals and not lawyers. And so I would like to propose the amendment of Guideline 1 of the guidelines that you have proposed to read as follows, if I may. A lawyer may permit a paralegal to perform services in the lawyer's representation of the lawyer's client, provided the lawyer, A, retains a direct lawyer-client relationship with the client, supervises the paralegal's performance of duties, and C, remains fully responsible for the paralegal's services, including all actions taken or not taken by the paralegal. I think that would eliminate any idea that the paralegal is representing someone other than, or representing someone as a lawyer, when in fact the paralegal is not. Okay. I would also like to recommend.
Well, Mr. Ostertag, perhaps that's a rather meaty proposal. Let's get a response from the presenters before you proceed to your next one.
We accept the proposal.
Under the governing Scott's rules of order.
Okay, well, I certainly would encourage it to be accepted as a friendly amendment. Do we have Bob, do you have the text of that you can provide to us? Do you have at the appropriate time, when you're done, do you have the text of your proposal that you can present?
I have it in pencil if you can read it, but I don't
I'm sure that the presenters have it. Okay, why don't you proceed with your second proposal?
And guideline number 6, just one change, and it would read, lawyers shall require that their paralegals, when dealing with the lawyer's clients, disclose at the outset that they are not lawyers.
Yeah, we accept that proposal as well.
Okay. And that's my contribution for the day.
And done very adroitly, as the red light has just come on.
It comes from a long time of practicing and a lot of support for paralegals who do a lot of good things for lawyers and their offices, and so that's my day.
Thank you, Mr. Ostertag. There are 2 motions that have been made. Let's treat them individually. I think that might be easier. Motions to amend the motion on the floor. The first one, is there a second to the first motion to amend? Second. Okay. Is there any discussion on the first motion to amend? Okay, there being none. Vince, did you say that you took down the language?
I did take down.
Why don't you read it back so that everybody understands what it is we're voting for before we act on the motion to amend?
Let's see, should I read the revised provision in full?
That's fine.
Okay. When I read the revised provision, it was a substitute for the old provision, and that's in Guideline 1.
Press the green light should be on.
Hello? Okay, great. Yeah, in Guideline 1, the substitute will now read, a lawyer may permit a paralegal to perform services in the lawyer's representation of the lawyer's client, provided the lawyer A, retains a direct relationship with the client, B, supervises the paralegal's performance of duties, and C, remains fully responsible for the paralegal's services, including all actions taken or not taken by the paralegal. New paragraph, except as otherwise provided by statute, court rule or decision, administrative rule or regulation, or by the New York rules of professional conduct.
Okay. Are there any further comments addressed to this proposed amendment? Okay, then we'll have a vote on the proposed amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the amendment carries. And we will now proceed to Mr. Ostertag's second proposed amendment. Do you have the text of that one?
Yeah, I do, and I guess I will again read it as a substitute.
That's fine.
In full. It shall now read in Guideline 6, a disclosure of non-lawyer status, that lawyers shall require that their paralegals, when dealing with the lawyer's clients, disclose at the outset that they are not lawyers. Lawyers shall also require that when a paralegal is dealing with a court, an administrative agency, attorneys, or the public, paralegals shall disclose at the outset that they are not lawyers and disclose the association with the attorney.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve that amendment? A second? Okay. Any other discussion addressed to the amendment? Yes, sir. Please step up to the microphone. I'm sorry, we'll take it out of order since it's addressed to the...
Hi, Gordon Eng. I'm with the New York County Lawyers. I support the amendment, but I just thought there was some ambiguity in the concept of at the outset, especially when you talk about institutional clients. And I would recommend that all written communications between a paralegal and a client should indicate that, maybe have a disclaimer at the end, or it's a kind of a reminder. Because when you say at the outset, you can say, okay, at the beginning of this multi-month representation, I told them I wasn't a lawyer. And, when you're dealing with an institutional client, you're dealing with many other individuals of the client. And so I think that ambiguity should be clarified, that in all communications, a paralegal should make it clear, that they're not a lawyer.
Are you proposing an amendment to the amendment?
Yes. I'm just pointing out a flaw in the proposed language.
Give us some proposed language that you would prefer to see in lieu of at the outset.
I'll leave that to Vince, but okay. You get the idea what I'm getting at. So I'm just asking for some consideration to address this point.
Okay.
I just think it's ambiguous and it could lead to abuse.
Would striking the words at the outset cure the problem?
Partly, but I think there should be at all times or in all communications, something that was a continuous, kind of a continuous disclaimer or disclosure.
I mean, that's a little burdensome.
I don't know, maybe somebody else can, I'm just pointing out an ambiguity. I haven't really given thought about how to draft the exact language, but I do think it should be corrected. Or in all communications, as Mr. Miller is suggesting.
I guess I have a little bit of hesitation on that. I mean, paralegals may communicate frequently, and do we really want them to say in every single communication that they're not a lawyer?
Well, I would say certainly in written communications, at least.
Maybe one way to do it is to leave it vague, that they shall sufficiently disclose, and then strike the words at the outset, that they are not lawyers.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the movement?
I think that's acceptable to me if it sounds reasonable to everyone else.
Mr. Ostertag, are you on board with that? You don't have to carry you. I'll recognize you from the floor. Okay. Well, why don't you approach the microphone then? Since you are the movement, you're entitled to understand the and address the motion to amend your motion to amend. So why don't you approach the microphone?
There's no such thing. It's out of order. You can't amend an amendment. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Paralegals do communicate fairly often in anonymous.
I didn't mean to create a problem here.
Okay. Vince, would you just repeat for Mr. Ostertag what it is we propose to accomplish here by the...
here's the proposed language, which was that we, let's see, is this on? Okay. Let me just read the whole thing as amended, or as proposed to be amended by Gordon. Lawyers shall require that their paralegals, when dealing with the lawyer's clients, sufficiently disclose that they are not lawyers, and without saying at the outset, and inserting the word sufficiently.
And
I think that is sufficient. I think that it happens occasionally, or more than occasionally, by accident. It's not meant to misrepresent, but sometimes it just flows out in conversation, and it flows out in presentation, and it's not meant to, but it does. And it seems to me, if what is being proposed is that every time the paralegal has to get on his feet or writes a letter of some kind, that he must state that he's not a lawyer, I think that's perhaps a little overkill. And I'm not sure that's necessary. Perhaps we ought to wait another 30 years to find out.
Well, no, we agree that that there should not necessarily be disclosure in every single communication. That's why the use of the word sufficiently disclose, which is a little bit of it affords a little bit of discretion as to when and how the disclosure needs to be made.
I think that we've sufficiently debated this point, and the amendment is before us. And at this time, let's take a vote. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to the, and actually, I know that there's some concern about amending an amendment, that, again, this is Scott's Rules of Order, and we will, in the interest of getting this completed in an efficient fashion, I would like to entertain a motion to accept the amendment and the amended to the underlying motion as it's now presently formulated. Okay? Okay. Is there a second? Is there a motion and a second? Okay. It's been moved and seconded, and now we are voting on the second issue raised by Mr. Ostertag, which is the timeliness and sufficiency of the disclosure about whether or not the fact that the paralegal is not a lawyer. Is there any further discussion on that point? Very well, then let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very well, the amendment carries, and that we'll move on from there. So thank you, Mr. Ostertag, for your contribution, and thank you for the contributions of the co-chairs of the task force. We'll now proceed with the discussion of the underlying motion now as amended.
Okay, Ron Minkoff, New York County Lawyers Association. I want to thank the task force for its hard work on this question. I just want to, I support the report, but I want to express my concern both about the report in one sense, and particularly about the comment from the Committee on Legal Aid that came in response to the report. The need for help in the housing courts and the commercial dispute courts for indigent people and near indigent people is immense, monstrous. We need to deal with it. We can't keep saying we're going to study this. We have to come up with solutions. The notion that there's going to be civil Gideon in New York City is nice, but that doesn't apply outside of New York City, and it's a big state out there. And this association really has to take a much more aggressive position in supporting the proposed legislation that's out there. And the notion that this report is supportive of the idea of consumer advocates, but not really going much beyond that, and that one part of this association has come out publicly to say that they oppose the use of court advocates outside of New York City. and the proposed legislation about it is troubling. So all I would say is that I urge the association, I urge Hank to look at this issue and make sure that our association is studying this and going to take a position on it while there's pending legislation about it, so that we can make sure that this happens, because it's needed. And we need to have court advocates, we need to have court navigators outside the city. Even if they're not licensed lawyers, we have to have rules, we have to have standards, but we have to have it. And we can't worry about UPL statutes when it comes to this. We have to find a way to do it that's going to work, because we need to service these people.
Thank you, Ron. Eileen?
Eileen Buholtz from the Tickle section. I have a question about the membership of your task force. Was Michael Martella from Monroe Community College on your task force?
On the membership subcommittee?
Was he on your task force at all?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to respectfully, I'm going to abstain from the vote on this.
Okay.
Paula Mallory Engel, delegate from the 5th Judicial District. I used to be a paralegal. How many people here worked as paralegals? There's no question you need to be directly supervised by an attorney, right? So I applaud the fact that we're not recommending that we make any changes to the professional code or the statutes. That being said, we can't be in the same position as recognizing the immense dearth of attorneys in rural communities, the need for representation in all of these jurisdictions in which life, liberty, interests are at stake, where they're underserved, and not open the door to qualified paralegal representation where appropriate. In fact, I think, while I applaud the report, I think we should go further. As having practiced in workers' compensation board hearings, you have non-lawyers there regularly competently representing people's interests to their benefit. And I think that I am disappointed, unfortunately, with the Committee on the Legal Aid attorneys and world, that they have taken this position, because as we just talked about in terms of funding immigration matters, that's not our purview. Our purview is to ensure that we expand equal access to competent legal assistance and to justice. And it is our recommendations that should further that support, and it is what we elect our legislatures to address in terms of how to fund it, but we have to raise the priority. So I support this report.
Thank you. The gentleman from Newburgh.
Michael Fox, former Vice President, current Orange County Bar Delegate. And I stand just to echo what some others have said, but with one point of respectful disagreement, in the sense that I don't think we should have either disregard for the UPL statutes, but I think we should have concern for them, but we should have a voice and we should be part of the discussion about increasing access to justice, where we know we have these issues and we have task forces that will address these issues. And I think this report goes a long way toward doing that. We are the professionals in the field of law. We are the JDs. We are the doctors of law. We are the ones who represent the clients. But I think if we have paralegals and others who work under our supervision, we have the ethical rules, 5.3, 5.1. Under our supervision, they can provide necessary services. And this report, I think, goes a long way. And having a membership, an associate membership class and category, brings them to the table, allows for discussions of these oversight opportunities, and I think will provide a great benefit to the community. I have some concerns about the non-legal technicians, the discussion about that's happening in some other jurisdictions. And I think this is a way for us to have our discussions here in New York to address these issues while we make sure that there is competent representation of everyone who's in need of representation.
Thank you, Michael. I previously advised you that this report and recommendation was approved yesterday at the Executive Committee. I've also been asked to remind you that I think you have at your place a memo from the Membership Committee indicating its support, and in particular its support for the establishment of a membership category for paralegals within the association. So having said that, there appears to be no further discussion, so let's bring it to a vote. The vote is on the report and recommendations of the task force as amended. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes clearly have it. The report is approved, and thank you to the co-chairs of the task force. With the thanks of the House, that goes without saying. Our next agenda item is the presentation of a brief report by former association president and nominating committee chair Claire P. Goodekunst. Claire?
Well, when I was asked to explain how do you become an officer and get on NYSBA's executive committee, first I thought, well, I could pull a Hank and ask David Miranda to explain it. Then I remembered last year when David was chair of the nominating committee, he couldn't even be bothered to come to Cooperstown to address the House. He literally phoned it in. So I decided I had to do the job myself. You know the old saying, if you want the job done right, ask a woman to do it. Hank has spoken about the future of our association and improvements in technology, but to move the association forward and achieve the goals that we all want, we need great leaders. We have had great leaders. We need to continue to have great leaders. So I am here to encourage each of you to consider running for office or nominating someone else for a leadership position in NYSBA. Now, you are all leaders of this association already, but what higher level leader positions are there? The executive committee is a great group of 30 people who are incredibly dedicated to this association. They include the people you see on the dais every House meeting: the president-elect, the treasurer, the secretary. We also have the immediate past president, vice presidents from each judicial district, 2 from the 1st, and 8 general members at large, of whom 2 must be racially or ethnically diverse, 1 young lawyer member at large, and 2 section members at large. There's a lot of what do they do, you know, what's available. You can learn more about that. I'm happy to talk to anybody who's interested in any of these positions, having served in a lot of them. But there are 1-year terms for the president-elect, the treasurer, and the secretary. You notice we don't elect a president. That's because we elect the president-elect, who then automatically becomes the president at the end of his or her term. The treasurer and secretary are elected for single 1-year terms, but eligible to be re-elected for up to 4 terms. Sorry, I'm trying to use technology here. Members at large are elected to a 2-year term, and then they can be elected to another 2-year term. So who can become an officer or get on the executive committee? Thankfully, there are no complicated criteria. All of you are eligible. Anyone who is an active member of NYSBA is eligible to become treasurer or secretary or a general member at large of the EC. And anyone who's a member of the House of Delegates, so that's all of you, or has served in the House in the last 5 years is eligible to become president-elect. And any member who's racially or ethnically diverse is eligible to become a diversity member at large. They have to come from different judicial districts, but that's a detail we can deal with if you're interested. Those are the positions for which the nominating committee nominates candidates. We also have vice presidents chosen by their districts. Young lawyer section selects its young lawyer member at large, and the section delegates select the section members at large. So you know you can do it. You know you should do it. So how do you do it? How do you become an officer or diversity or general member at large? If you want to run for president-elect, you must submit, the bylaws provide, you must submit a declaration of candidacy by September 1st. If you're running for treasurer, secretary, or member at large, we encourage you to submit your application, your nomination, by September 1st, but you are allowed to do so later in the fall. You can nominate yourself, or you can have someone else nominate you. Simply submit a letter of nomination and a bio to the association, and you can submit up to 5 letters in support of your candidacy. Now, once you become a candidate, how do you win office? The nominating committee, a number of people in this room are on the nominating committee, 39 people from around the state meet twice, in New York City on September 16th and in Albany on November 1st, to interview candidates. Candidates for president-elect typically have to attend both of those meetings, and the other candidates for other offices can select whichever of those meetings they want to be interviewed at, so you don't have to travel down if you don't want to come down from upstate or Western New York. After interviewing the candidates, the nominating committee will vote to propose a slate of nominees, and then they will be elected at the annual meeting in January 2020 and take office on June 1st, 2020. So it's really not that hard. As a member of this House, you already are a leader of this association, so please consider stepping up and seeking higher office. It's a big responsibility, but it is incredibly rewarding, working with a great group of people to lead what we have heard several times today is the best bar association in the world. NYSBA needs strong, committed, diverse leaders. If not you, who? If not now, when? And there are limited slots available, so if you run this year and you don't get nominated, don't give up, come back, because many of us have had to go through multiple cycles before getting the positions that we wanted, but at least people get to know who you are. So if you have any questions about what positions are open this year, about what serving in one of these positions entails, or about the process, please feel free to call me or email me. So thank you very much. Have a great summer.
Thank you very much, Claire, for your informative report. And that brings us to let's see now. Administrative items, and we have 4 administrative items which should not take long. The first is the ratification of the President's designation of chair and members of the Audit Committee. President Greenberg has appointed Elizabeth Champnoy as chair of the committee and new members Brian Hetherington and Naomi Hills as members of the Audit Committee. May I have a motion to ratify these appointments? Is there a second? Got that. Okay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you very much. The second administrative item is a reminder that following the meeting today, the Committee on Leadership Development will meet with first-time House members in the Council Rock room, which I believe is below us it's on this floor, right across the way? Okay, excellent. To discuss the House meeting. We encourage members to attend. I will be in attendance, and if that's not a draw, I don't know what is. Third, our gala chair, John Gross, has asked for the opportunity to make a brief announcement concerning the January 30th, 2020 NYSBA Gala Dinner. The chair recognizes Mr. Gross for that purpose.
Good morning, everybody. I'll be very brief. I know it's the end of the meeting. For 118 years, from 1887 through 1995, our great association hosted the social event of the legal season at a major hotel in New York City, our gala. At that gala, we honored various persons. In 1918, for example, Charles Evan Hughes was president of this association. The speaker at that association was the British Attorney General, who criticized Woodrow Wilson in some of his decisions that led to a major kerfuffle at our annual gala. We've been addressed by Dwight Eisenhower in the past at this gala, Benjamin Cardozo. We've awarded gold medals to the following individuals. In the recent past at the gala, William Brennan, Thurgood Marshall, Potter Stewart, Robert Jackson, and Felix Frankfurter. At our gala this year, which will be held at the Museum of Natural History, in the whale room, which has no relation to the diet that will be, or the menu that will be presented at that dinner. Will be, we're hoping, upwards of 800 people. We will be having a cocktail party in the dinosaur room. And it will be just the social event of the season, and we're very hopeful that you will participate and attend. Table sales are moving relatively rapidly, so I urge you to, when you're contacted by a member of our committee, your firms, to commit to a table. Individuals who would like to attend, you may speak directly to Kim Mahar at the State Bar, who will facilitate registration and purchase of seats. There are ample opportunities for those who don't want to purchase a table but would like to sponsor the help sponsor the event, to choose different avenues of advertisement. We will be awarding the gold medal to a justice of the Supreme Court, whose name we can't publicly release yet. Also, we will be honoring at the event the entire Court of Appeals. Judge DiFiore has been very supportive of this wonderful planned event for our great association, and I would urge all of you, as quickly as you can, to register by purchasing a table for your firm or on an individual basis. And also, I had the opportunity to address the sections this morning. There is potential opportunity for sponsorship or purchase of a table, subject to certain requirements that the Finance Committee will advise you on. That is another source of participation in this event. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you at our gala on Thursday of Bar Week.
Thank you, John. Okay, one final administrative item. Gordon Eng of the Committee on Standards of Attorney. You can come up here to the, Gordon, you can come up to the podium. The Committee on Standards of Attorney Conduct, which we affectionately call COSAC, wishes to make a brief announcement on behalf of that committee. Gordon?
Thank you. Roy Simon, the chair of COSAC, asked that the various COSAC members who will be attending try to reach out to the House delegates and other leaders of sections and committees about public commentary on revision of affecting sections 1, 2, 4, section 5, particularly on law firm practice, and section 7 on the advertising rules. As you know, COSAC has been undergoing extensive review of the rules of professional conduct. And Roy's understanding was that this public commentary has already come out. I don't think it has, but it will be coming out. We're asking for comments by August 9th. I think after we get those comments probably presented for the November meeting. But I just want to alert everybody to it. It's fairly extensive. And if there are any questions or issues, or if anybody has any revisions they want to suggest, maybe get in touch with Roy Simon or Barbara Gillers or Joe Newhouse or any other COSAC members that you know of, and maybe we can address those issues before the November meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eng. Is there any new business? Okay. There being none, I will announce that the next meeting of the House of Delegates will take place on Saturday, November 2nd at the Bar Center in Albany. There being no other business, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. We stand in adjournment. Thank you.